Maya's blood turned to ice when she saw the man crouched beside her 11-year-old daughter at Riverside Elementary. Even from across the schoolyard, even after 12 years, she recognized David Sterling immediately. The same strong jawline, the same kind brown eyes, the same distinctive zigzag cowlick that he was now pointing to in fascination as he looked at Zoe's identical hair pattern. "We match," she heard Zoe exclaim cheerfully, completely oblivious to the earth-shattering moment unfolding before her mother's horrified eyes. Maya forced herself to walk across that schoolyard, her legs feeling like lead, her heart hammering against her ribs. But as David looked up and their eyes met, she was transported back to a September evening 12 years ago that had changed the course of her entire life. She had been 22 then, adjusting her black dress one final time before stepping into the gleaming ballroom of the Meridian Hotel. The annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. Crystal chandeliers casting dancing shadows across marble floors, the soft murmur of polite conversation mixing with gentle notes from a string quartet. Maya clutched her volunteer coordinator badge, reminding herself she was there to help raise money for underprivileged kids, not to gawk at the wealthy elite. "Maya." Jennifer, the foundation's event director, had called out, hurrying over with a clipboard. "Thank God you're here. We need someone to handle the silent auction table near the back. Can you manage that?" Of course, Maya had smiled, grateful for something to focus on. She'd been volunteering with Children's Hope for 2 years, ever since her sophomore year at community college. Working with children had always been her calling, even if her tight budget meant she could only afford part-time classes while working at a daycare center. The evening had progressed smoothly until disaster struck. The projector for the main presentation malfunctioned just as they were about to showcase the foundation's achievements. Maya found herself troubleshooting the technical issue, her business administration coursework finally proving useful in an unexpected way. Having trouble with that? She'd looked up to find a man in an impeccably tailored navy suit watching her with genuine concern. He was tall, maybe early 30s, with kind brown eyes and that distinctive zigzag cowlick that made his otherwise perfectly styled hair endearingly imperfect. "Just a loose connection, I think," Maya had replied, adjusting a cable behind the screen. "There, got it. Welcome back, Golden Family. If you're new here, you've just discovered a channel dedicated to bringing you the most emotional, romantic, and life-changing stories that will keep you captivated from beginning to end. Subscribe **** and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest heart-stopping stories. Now, let's get back to the story." The projector hummed to life, displaying the foundation's logo clearly. A small cheer went up from nearby staff members. "Impressive," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm David Sterling." Maya's breath had caught. David Sterling, she knew that name. Sterling Enterprises was one of the city's most successful tech companies, and one of the foundation's biggest donors. She processed his donation checks herself. "Maya Johnson," she'd replied, shaking his hand and hoping her nervousness didn't show. "I'm a volunteer coordinator. The woman who keeps everything running smoothly, then. I'm grateful for people like you, Maya. This foundation means a lot to me." There was something in his voice, a sincerity that surprised her. She'd expected arrogance, maybe condescension from someone of his stature. Instead, she found herself drawn into conversation with a man who spoke passionately about education reform and seemed genuinely interested in her experiences working with children. The way he spoke about those children, the genuine emotion in his voice, it made her see him not as the untouchable CEO from society pages, but as someone who truly cared about making a difference. When the formal program ended and guests began moving toward the reception, David had turned to her with nervous energy. "I know this might be presumptuous, but would you like to get some air? The balcony overlooks the city, it's quite a view." Maya had hesitated. She should be helping with cleanup, making sure auction items were properly cataloged. But something about David's expression, hopeful yet respectful, made her nod. There was an electricity between them that she'd never experienced before, a connection that felt both thrilling and terrifying. The hotel's terrace was nearly empty, just a few couples enjoying the warm September evening. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. The gentle breeze carried jasmine scent from the hotel's gardens, and somewhere in the distance, soft jazz music drifted from another event. "It's beautiful," Maya had breathed, leaning against the stone railing. "It is," David had agreed, but when she glanced at him, he was looking at her rather than the view. They talked until nearly midnight, and Maya found herself sharing things she'd never told anyone. About her dreams of becoming a social worker, about her fears that she'd never make the kind of difference she wanted to make in the world. David listened with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the universe. "You could do so much good," David had said softly, his voice filled with conviction. "I can see it in the way you talk about the children. They're lucky to have someone who cares like you do." The sincerity in his words made her chest warm. Here was this successful, accomplished man telling her that her dreams mattered, that her work had value. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that, like she was capable of changing the world? David shared his plans to expand Sterling Enterprises' community outreach programs, his vision for using technology to bridge educational gaps in underserved communities. But more than that, he talked about his loneliness, about how success had brought him everything except genuine connection. "I've been to 100 events like tonight," he'd admitted, his fingers tracing patterns on the stone railing. "Met countless people who want something from me, business deals, donations, social connections. But I've never met anyone who made me forget about all of that. Until tonight." Maya's heart had raced. Was this really happening? Was David Sterling this incredible man who could have anyone really interested in her? The way he looked at her made her feel beautiful, important, like she mattered in a way that went beyond her volunteer work or modest accomplishments. When he offered to drive her home, Maya almost said no. But something about the evening felt magical, suspended outside of real life. She found herself accepting, settling into the leather seat of his BMW with a sense of unreality. They sat outside her modest apartment building for another hour, conversation flowing as easily as it had all evening. "I've never talked to anyone like this," Maya had admitted as the clock showed well past 1 in the morning. "I feel like I've known you forever." "I feel the same way," David had said softly. "Maya, I know this might sound crazy, but tonight has been the most real conversation I've had in years." The vulnerability in his voice, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and rare, made Maya's resolve crumble. When he walked her to her door and in the soft glow of the porch light kissed her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. It was gentle at first, questioning, and when she responded, it deepened into something that made her entire body come alive. She could taste the wine they'd shared on the terrace, could feel the warmth of his hands as they framed her face like she was something delicate and treasured. Before she fully processed what was happening, she was inviting him inside, her heart pounding not just with desire but with the overwhelming rightness of the moment. This wasn't just physical attraction. This was connection, the kind of soul-deep recognition that poets wrote about and she'd never believed actually existed. Maya had never been intimate with anyone before. At 22, she'd focused on her studies and work, never finding anyone who made her feel the way David did in just one evening. When she invited him inside, her hands were trembling, but not from fear. From anticipation, from the certainty that this moment was meant to happen. David seemed to sense her inexperience without her having to say anything. He was incredibly gentle, patient, making sure she felt safe and cherished every step of the way. His touch was reverent, like he understood the gift she was giving him. What should have been awkward became beautiful, a dance of discovery and tenderness that left her breathless and transformed. Afterward, they lay entwined on her narrow bed, talking softly as dawn crept through her curtains. David traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, and Maya had never felt so complete, so perfectly where she belonged. "I should go," David had said reluctantly as morning light filled the room, but his arms tightened around her as if he couldn't bear to let her go. "But I'd like to see you again, Maya." She nodded, still dizzy from the night's events, and gave him her phone number with hands that shook slightly. After he left, she sat in her small kitchen, replaying every moment, every touch, every whispered word. The taste of his kiss still lingered on her lips, and she could smell his cologne on her skin. For the first time in her life, Maya understood what it meant to fall completely, irrevocably in love. Maya floated through the morning in a haze of blissful contentment. Every surface in her small apartment seemed to hold traces of David. The rumpled sheets that still carried his scent, the coffee mug he'd used while they talked as sunrise painted her kitchen golden, the way her lips still tingled from his goodbye kiss. She caught herself smiling at nothing, replaying the way he'd looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She'd given him something precious, her first time, her trust, her heart, and it had felt perfect. More than perfect. It felt like destiny. Maya was folding laundry when her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Jessica. The message made her smile. Jessica was always sending her celebrity gossip and local news updates, usually accompanied by dramatic commentary. "OMG girl, did you see the news? David Sterling announced his engagement to Vanessa Whitmore this morning. It's all over social media. That lucky witch is going to be so rich." The laundry basket slipped from Maya's hands, clothes scattering across her living room floor. For a moment she couldn't process the words. They seemed to float in front of her eyes without meaning, like a foreign language she couldn't decode. David Sterling. Engagement. This morning. With trembling fingers she pulled up the local news website. The page loaded slowly, each second stretching into eternity, and then there it was, a glossy photo that made her stomach drop to her feet. David in the same navy suit he'd worn the night before, his arm around a stunning blonde woman in an elegant cream dress. They were standing in what looked like a private garden, both smiling radiantly at the camera. The woman's left hand was prominently displayed, showing off a diamond ring that probably cost more than Maya made in a year. The headline read, Sterling Enterprises CEO announces engagement to philanthropist heiress Vanessa Whitmore. Maya's vision blurred as she read the article with growing horror. The engagement had been in the works for months, and was being announced after David's return from a business trip to New York. The piece gushed about how perfect they were together. Two prominent families joining forces, shared philanthropic interests, a union that would strengthen both their business empires. There were quotes from David about how blessed he felt to have found his perfect partner, and how they were planning a spring wedding at the Whitmore family estate. Vanessa spoke about their deep connection and shared values, about how they'd known each other since childhood and had always been meant to be together. Maya read the article 3 times, each pass making the betrayal cut deeper. The timestamp showed it had been published at 8:47 a.m., less than 2 hours after David had left her bed, after he'd kissed her goodbye and promised to call. She stumbled to her bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left, her body rejecting the reality as violently as her mind was trying to. When she finally looked up at her reflection in the mirror, she saw a stranger, hollow-eyed, pale, utterly shattered. How could she have been so naive? How could she have believed that someone like David Sterling would actually want someone like her for anything more than a single night of entertainment? She'd been a mistake, a last fling before he settled down with the woman he really wanted. Someone from his own world, someone who belonged at galas and charity events by right rather than as a volunteer serving drinks and fixing broken equipment. The cruelest part was how genuine he'd seemed. The way he'd looked at her, touched her, spoken to her, it had all felt so real. But it had been an act, a performance by a man who was probably laughing about it with his fiancée right now. Poor little Maya, so grateful for his attention, so easy to seduce. Maya's phone rang, and for one wild moment her heart leaped, thinking it might be David calling to explain, to tell her this was all some terrible mistake. But it was Jessica, her voice bright with excitement. Can you believe it? I mean, I know you volunteer for that charity thing he supports, so you've probably seen him around. Isn't he gorgeous? And that ring. I looked it up, it's a 5-carat Tiffany solitaire. Can you even imagine? I have to go, Maya managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Wait, are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. Just tired. I'll call you later. Maya hung up and immediately deleted David's number from her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she could barely hit the right buttons. She couldn't bear the thought of him calling, of having to hear his voice making excuses or worse, pretending nothing had happened between them. She spent the rest of the day in a fog of humiliation and heartbreak. Every time she closed her eyes she saw that photo, David's arm around Vanessa, both of them glowing with happiness. The happiness that should have been hers, that she'd been foolish enough to believe could be hers. The worst part was how thoroughly she'd given herself to him. Not just her body but her heart, her trust. She'd shared things with him that she'd never told anyone, had let him see parts of her soul that she'd kept carefully guarded. And he'd taken it all, used it all, then walked away to announce his engagement to someone else. Maya called in sick to work, unable to face the cheerful chaos of the daycare when her world had crumbled. She lay in bed, still able to smell David's cologne on her pillows, and cried until she had no tears left. Then she got up, stripped the bed, and threw everything into the washing machine, trying to erase every trace of the night that had meant everything to her and apparently nothing to him. Over the next few days the engagement dominated the local society pages. Photos of David and Vanessa at various events, details about their upcoming spring wedding, speculation about the merger between their families' business interests. Maya tortured herself reading every article, analyzing every photo of his smiling face for some sign that he regretted what had happened between them. There was nothing. He looked genuinely happy, completely at peace with his decision. In one particularly painful interview, he spoke about how he'd never been more certain of anything, and how Vanessa was everything he'd ever wanted in a partner. Maya realized she needed to disappear, to start over somewhere David Sterling would never accidentally encounter her again. She couldn't bear the thought of running into him at a charity event, of having to smile and pretend that night had never happened while he stood beside his beautiful fiancée. She found a smaller apartment across town, gave notice at her current job, and enrolled in different classes under her middle name. If David ever tried to find her, which seemed unlikely, he'd discover that Maya Johnson had simply vanished. 3 weeks into her new life, as she was trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy, the nausea started. At first, Maya told herself it was stress. She was working double shifts at a new daycare to save money for next semester's tuition, and her body was probably just rebelling against the pace and the emotional trauma. But when she missed her period, something that had never happened, a cold dread settled in her stomach. She bought the pregnancy test on a Tuesday evening, her hands shaking as she placed it on the counter next to milk and bread, trying to look casual while her world tilted on its axis. The cashier, a bored teenager, didn't even glance at her purchases. Back in her new apartment, Maya stared at the test box for 20 minutes before finally opening it. The instructions seemed impossibly complicated through her panic, but eventually she managed to follow them. The 2 pink lines appeared almost instantly. Maya stared at the test for a full 10 minutes as if willing the lines to disappear. But they remained stark and undeniable. She was pregnant with David Sterling's baby, a man who was engaged to someone else and had probably forgotten her name by now. The irony was devastating. She'd given him her virginity, her heart, her complete trust, and now she was carrying his child while he planned his wedding to another woman. The baby would be a constant reminder of the most beautiful and most painful night of her life. Maya sank to her bathroom floor, the positive test clutched in her trembling hands, and made a decision that would shape the next 12 years of her life. She would keep this baby, but David Sterling would never know. He'd made his choice and it wasn't her. She wouldn't be the desperate woman who tried to trap a wealthy man with an unwanted pregnancy. She would raise this child alone, with love and dignity, and David Sterling would remain nothing more than a beautiful, painful memory. 2 months into her pregnancy, as morning sickness made her workdays at the daycare increasingly challenging, Maya made a decision that surprised even herself. She was keeping the baby. Despite her limited resources, despite the challenges ahead, she couldn't bring herself to end this pregnancy. Maybe it was the way her heart raced every time she thought about the tiny life growing inside her. Or maybe it was remembering how David had spoken about his own difficult childhood and wanting to give this child the love and stability he'd missed. But she wouldn't tell him. What was the point? He was building a life with someone else, someone who belonged in his world. The last thing he needed was a complication from a one-night stand, and the last thing Maya needed was to be seen as some kind of opportunist trying to trap a wealthy man. She would handle this alone, the way she'd handled everything else in her life. Maya threw herself into preparation with the same determination she brought to everything else. She applied for every scholarship and assistance program she could find, eventually securing enough aid to continue her education part-time. The financial aid counselor, a kind woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, helped her navigate the maze of programs available to single mothers. "You're not the first young woman to find herself in this situation," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently during one of their meetings. "And you won't be the last. The important thing is that you're being proactive, planning ahead. That tells me you're going to be just fine." Maya moved to an even smaller apartment, a tiny one-bedroom in a complex that catered to students and young families. The walls were thin and the carpet was worn, but it was clean and safe, and the rent was something she could manage on her daycare salary plus financial aid. When her pregnancy began to show, Maya crafted a careful story for her family and friends. The father was someone she'd briefly dated who'd moved away for work, a relationship that hadn't worked out but had ended amicably. She kept the details vague, deflecting questions with a sad smile and a change of subject. "What was his name, honey?" her mother asked during one of their weekly phone calls, her voice gentle with concern. "David," Maya said quietly. It was the only piece of truth she allowed herself. "Well, his loss is our gain," her mother replied firmly. "This baby is going to be so loved, sweetheart. We'll make sure of that." Maya's mother, Rose, had raised Maya alone after her father left when Maya was 5. If anyone understood the challenges ahead, it was Rose. She drove down from Portland every few weeks, bringing groceries and baby supplies, never once making Maya feel judged or ashamed. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Maya threw herself into preparing for motherhood with characteristic determination. She read every parenting book she could get from the library, took childbirth classes at the community center, and saved every penny she could toward the medical bills. Her co-workers at the daycare were supportive, sharing hand-me-down baby clothes and offering advice about everything from breastfeeding to sleep schedules. "You're going to be a wonderful mother," said Linda, the daycare director, watching Maya comfort a crying toddler with practiced ease. "You have such a natural way with children. This baby is lucky to have you." Maya's due date fell in February, and as winter settled over the city, she found herself growing increasingly excited despite her circumstances. She'd set up a small nursery in the corner of her bedroom, decorating it with cheerful yellow and green since she'd decided to wait to learn the baby's gender. She wanted some surprises left in her life, some joy that wasn't complicated by heartbreak. On a snowy February morning, 3 weeks before her due date, Maya woke to contractions that took her breath away. She'd been having false alarms for weeks, but this felt different, urgent, real, unstoppable. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 18 hours. Maya's mother held her hand through every contraction, whispering encouragement and wiping her forehead with cool cloths. When the final push came, Maya summoned strength she didn't know she possessed. And then, suddenly there was crying, loud, indignant, absolutely perfect crying. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing the squirming, red-faced baby on Maya's chest. Maya looked down at her daughter and felt her heart explode with love so fierce it took her breath away. The baby was beautiful, with a cap of dark hair that already showed the distinctive zigzag cowlick that marked her as unmistakably her father's child. But in that moment, Maya didn't think about David. She thought only about this perfect little person who was completely, utterly hers. "She's perfect," the nurse said softly, checking the baby's vital signs. "Look at that hair pattern, so unique. She's going to be a beauty." Maya named her Zoe because it meant life, and this little girl represented a completely new chapter for both of them. As she held her daughter for the first time, Maya made a silent promise. Zoe would never doubt that she was wanted, loved, cherished. She would never feel like a mistake or an inconvenience. The early years were harder than Maya had anticipated, but also more rewarding than she'd ever imagined. Daycare costs ate up most of her paycheck, leaving little for anything beyond basic necessities, but Maya was resourceful. She shopped at thrift stores, accepted hand-me-downs gratefully, and learned to stretch every dollar until it screamed. She switched to online classes to accommodate Zoe's schedule, stretching her degree timeline but ensuring she could be present for her daughter. Some nights, after Zoe was asleep, Maya would study at her kitchen table until her eyes burned, determined to build a better future for both of them. Zoe was a bright, curious child who asked constant questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether dinosaurs had feelings. Maya answered them all as best she could, marveling at her daughter's quick mind and infectious laugh. Even during the hardest moments, when Zoe was teething and screaming at 3 in the morning, when Maya was surviving on 4 hours of sleep and instant coffee, she never regretted her decision to keep her daughter. "Mama, why don't I have a daddy like the other kids?" Zoe asked one day when she was 4, having noticed the family dynamics at her preschool. Maya had prepared for this question, but it still made her heart ache. She knelt down to Zoe's eye level, choosing her words carefully. "Some families have mommies and daddies, some have just mommies, some have just daddies, and some have grandparents or other people who love them. We have each other, and that makes us a family. But where is my daddy?" Zoe persisted with 4-year-old logic. "He's not able to be with us, sweetheart. But that doesn't mean you're missing anything. You have so many people who love you, me, Grandma Rose, Uncle Marcus, all your teachers." Zoe seemed to accept this explanation, but Maya could see the wheels turning in her daughter's bright mind. She knew more questions would come eventually, and each year they would get harder to answer. As the years passed, Maya gradually built a stable life for them. She finished her degree in social work when Zoe was 6, landing a position with the county's child services department. The work was challenging but fulfilling, and the benefits finally gave them the security Maya had been working toward. They moved to a better apartment in a safer neighborhood with good schools. Maya bought her first car, a reliable used Honda that she paid for in cash after months of saving. Small victories, but they felt enormous to someone who'd started with nothing. Zoe excelled in school, showing particular aptitude for math and science. She was popular with her classmates and teachers, a natural leader with an infectious enthusiasm for learning. Maya was prouder of her daughter every day, even as certain moments made her heart clench with bittersweet recognition. When Zoe laughed really hard, she got the same crinkles around her eyes that David had. When she concentrated on homework, she unconsciously ran her fingers through that distinctive cowlick, smoothing it down in a gesture that was purely her father's. She had David's quick wit and his way of tilting her head when she was thinking through a problem. Maya never spoke about these resemblances, but she treasured them privately. They were her secret connection to a night that had changed her life forever, reminders that something beautiful had come from something painful. Occasionally, Maya would see David's name in the business section of the newspaper or catch a glimpse of him at community events. He'd built Sterling Enterprises into one of the region's most successful companies, expanding into renewable energy and educational technology. His marriage to Vanessa seemed stable. They appeared together at charity functions, and society pages mentioned their various philanthropic efforts. Maya was surprised to find that the pain had faded over the years, replaced by something more like wistful gratitude. Their one night together had given her Zoe, and she couldn't regret that, no matter how complicated the circumstances. When Zoe turned 10, she became obsessed with genealogy after a school project on family trees. She peppered Maya with questions about relatives, medical history, anything that might give her clues about her father's identity. "I know you said he can't be with us, Mama, but what if something happens to you? What if I need to know about diseases that run in families? What if he doesn't even know I exist?" That last question cut too close to home. Maya deflected as best she could, but she could see Zoe's frustration growing. Her daughter was too smart, too determined to be satisfied with vague answers forever. Maya knew that eventually the truth would have to come out. She just hadn't expected it to happen on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon at Riverside Elementary, when her carefully constructed world would collide with the past she tried so hard to leave behind. Maya was running late picking up Zoe from school after a particularly difficult case had kept her at the office. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under her feet as she hurried toward the school entrance, already rehearsing her apology to Zoe for being late. But when she spotted her daughter near the flagpole, Maya's world came to a screeching halt. Zoe wasn't alone. A tall man in a business suit was crouched down to her eye level, pointing at something in her hair with what looked like fascination and wonder. Even from a distance, even after 12 years, Maya recognized David Sterling immediately. He'd aged well, his face more mature but those kind brown eyes unchanged. The same strong jawline, the same way of holding himself with quiet confidence. And he was staring at Zoe with an expression of dawning recognition that made Maya's stomach drop to her feet. She watched in horror as David reached up to touch his own head, then looked back at Zoe's distinctive cowlick pattern. The same zigzag swirl that had marked them both, that Maya had lovingly traced with her finger every night when she tucked her daughter into bed. The genetic signature that proclaimed their connection louder than any birth certificate ever could. "We match," Maya heard Zoe exclaim cheerfully, completely oblivious to the earth-shattering moment unfolding before her mother's horrified eyes. "This is so cool. I've never met anyone else with hair like mine." Maya forced herself to walk forward, her legs feeling like lead, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone in the schoolyard could hear it. David looked up as she approached, and their eyes met across the distance. The impact was immediate and devastating. She saw recognition, shock, and something that might have been joy flicker across his features in rapid succession. "Mama?" Zoe called out, turning toward her with a bright smile. "This is Mr. Sterling. He was picking up his nephew Tommy, and he noticed my hair does that funny thing like his does. See?" She turned to show David her cowlick again, her face glowing with the excitement of finding someone who shared her unique trait. "We match. Isn't that amazing?" "Yes," David said softly, his voice rough with emotion as his eyes remained locked on Maya's face. "We certainly do match." Maya felt like she was drowning in broad daylight. This was the moment she'd dreaded for 12 years, the collision of past and present that she tried so hard to prevent. David's eyes held 1,000 questions, and she could see his brilliant mind putting the pieces together with terrifying speed. "Zoe, go get in the car," Maya managed, her voice barely steady. "We need to get going." "But Mama, Mr. Sterling was telling me about how his hair used to make him self-conscious when he was little, just like mine sometimes does. He said I should be proud of what makes me unique, that it's like having a special signature that nobody else has." Maya's heart clenched. Of course David would say exactly the right thing to their daughter. Of course he would know instinctively how to make her feel special rather than different. Even without knowing who Zoe was, he'd recognized something precious in her. "Now, Zoe," Maya said more firmly, desperation creeping into her voice. Something in her mother's tone made Zoe's smile fade. She looked between the two adults, clearly sensing undercurrents she didn't understand. Her bright, perceptive eyes took in Maya's pale face, David's intense stare, the way they seemed frozen in some kind of silent communication. "It was nice meeting you, Mr. Sterling," she said politely, her natural good manners overriding her confusion. "Maybe I'll see you around sometime." "I hope so," David replied, his voice gentle but his eyes never leaving Maya's face. "I really hope so." Zoe headed toward Maya's car, glancing back once with a puzzled expression before climbing into the passenger seat. Maya watched her daughter buckle her seatbelt, buying herself a few more seconds before she had to face the conversation that would change everything. David stood slowly, never taking his eyes off Maya. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. He was still devastatingly handsome, still carried himself with that quiet authority that had drawn her to him all those years ago. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight of emotion that made Maya's chest tight. "I don't think that's a good idea." Maya's voice came out steadier than she felt, but her hands were shaking. Maya. Her name on his lips after all these years made her heart race with remembered pain and unwanted longing. "Please. She's mine, isn't she?" Maya glanced around frantically, making sure no one was close enough to overhear. The few remaining parents were focused on their own children, but she still felt exposed, vulnerable, like her carefully constructed life was crumbling in broad daylight. "I can't do this here." "Then where?" "When?" His voice was urgent but not demanding, respectful of her obvious distress but determined to get answers. "Maya, I've thought about you every day for 12 years. I looked for you after that night, but you'd moved, changed your number. I thought—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair in a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "I thought you regretted what happened between us." "You were engaged," Maya whispered fiercely, the old pain flaring to life as if no time had passed at all. "The very next morning. Engaged to someone else." David's face went white, confusion and something that looked like horror flickering across his features. "What are you talking about?" "It was all over the news, David. Your engagement to Vanessa Whitmore. Announced the morning after our night together." The words tasted bitter in her mouth, 12 years of hurt and betrayal condensed into a few devastating sentences. For a long moment, David just stared at her, his expression cycling through confusion, realization, and what looked like grief. When understanding finally dawned in his eyes, it was followed immediately by something that looked like devastation. "Oh Maya. No. That engagement had been arranged by our families for months, announced while I was supposedly on a business trip. I broke it off 3 days later when I realized I couldn't marry her, couldn't stop thinking about you. The whole thing was called off within a week." Maya felt the ground shift beneath her feet, 12 years of carefully constructed reality crumbling in an instant. "But the papers said." The papers said what they always say, what our PR teams wanted them to say to save face. "Mutual decision, remain friends, different life goals." David's voice was bitter with old frustration. "I spent months looking for you, Maya. I went to every Children's Hope event hoping you'd be there. You disappeared completely. I moved across town. Changed my phone number. Started using my middle name at work." Maya's voice came out barely above a whisper. "I thought you were married." "I've never married anyone. Never even came close." David looked toward the car where Zoe was waiting, her face pressed against the window watching them with obvious curiosity. "She's 11? Maya nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. "Her name?" "Zoe. Zoe Johnson. She's beautiful. She looks like you, but that hair." David's voice cracked slightly. "I used to hate this cowlick when I was a kid. Kids made fun of it, called me Wheatfield head because of the way it grows in that zigzag pattern. But seeing it on her, Maya, she's perfect." "I know." Tears were threatening now, and Maya blinked them back fiercely. "David, I need time to think about this. She doesn't know who you are. What have you told her about her father?" "That he couldn't be with us. That he doesn't know she exists." Maya met his eyes, seeing her own pain reflected there. "I never wanted her to feel abandoned or unwanted. But I do want her. I want both of you. I've wanted that since the night we met." The simple sincerity in his voice nearly broke Maya's composure entirely. "I can't just drop this news on her, David. She's a child. She has questions, but she's also scared of change. And Maya's voice caught. "I don't know how to do this. I've been her only parent for 12 years. I'm not asking you to give that up. I'm asking you to let me be part of it. To let me try to make up for lost time, for the support you should have had all along." David pulled out his business card, wrote something on the back and handed it to Maya. "That's my personal number. Please think about what I've said." "And Maya?" He paused, looking toward Zoe again. "Thank you. For giving her life, for raising her alone when you thought I'd abandoned you both. Thank you for making sure she knows she's loved." Maya clutched the card, her hands shaking. "This is complicated, David." "I know. But some things are worth the complications." He walked away then toward a sleek sedan where a young boy was waiting. Maya watched him go, her mind reeling with everything that had just happened. 12 years of assumptions, shattered in the span of a 10-minute conversation. 12 years of believing she'd been betrayed, when the truth was so much more complicated. "Mama?" Zoe's voice called from the car. "Are you okay? You look like you're going to cry." Maya wiped her eyes and forced a smile as she got into the driver's seat. "I'm fine, baby. Just thinking about work stuff." That night, after Zoe was asleep, Maya sat in her kitchen staring at David's business card. She thought about the past 12 years, the struggles and triumphs she'd faced alone. She thought about Zoe's questions about her father, her growing desire to understand where she came from. Most of all, she thought about the look in David's eyes when he'd said he'd never stop thinking about her, that he'd looked for her for months. The pain in his voice when he'd realized what she'd believed all these years. Maybe it was time to stop protecting them all from the truth. Maybe it was time to find out what kind of family they could build together, complicated as it might be. Maya picked up her phone and before she could lose her nerve, typed a simple message, "Coffee tomorrow? We have a lot to talk about." The response came within minutes. "Thank you. Name the place and time. I'll be there." For the first time in 12 years, Maya allowed herself to hope that their story might have a happy ending after all. Maya arrived at the small cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where they could speak privately. She ordered coffee she didn't want and watched the door, her stomach churning with nervous energy. When David walked in, scanning the room until his eyes found hers, Maya felt that same electric jolt of recognition that had hit her 12 years ago. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. His usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled, and there were new lines of stress around his eyes. But when he saw her, his face softened with something that looked like relief. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said as he sat down across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," Maya admitted. "But Zoe deserves to know the truth." "We both do." David ordered coffee and they sat in awkward silence for a moment, 12 years of separation stretching between them like a chasm. Finally, David spoke. "Tell me about her. About Zoe. What's she like?" Maya's face softened as she thought about her daughter. "She's incredible. Brilliant, curious about everything. She wants to be a marine biologist one day or maybe an astronaut. It changes depending on what documentary she's watched recently. She's kind, funny, stubborn when she believes in something." Maya paused, then added quietly, "She has your laugh. And your way of tilting her head when she's thinking." David's eyes filled with emotion. "I can't believe I missed 12 years of her life. Her first steps, first words, first day of school. David, you didn't know. I made sure you didn't know." Maya's voice was heavy with the weight of her decision. "I thought you'd chosen someone else. I thought telling you would just complicate your life." "My life has been empty without you both," David said quietly. "After I broke off the engagement with Vanessa, I threw myself into work. Built the company, made more money than I could ever spend, won awards and recognition. But none of it meant anything because the one person I wanted to share it with was gone." Maya studied his face, looking for any sign of deception, but she saw only sincerity and pain. "Why didn't you try harder to find me?" "I did try. For 2 years I had people looking for you. But Maya Johnson is a common name, and when you started using your middle name professionally, the trail went completely cold. Eventually, I told myself you'd probably left the state, maybe even the country. I had to accept that you didn't want to be found." The pain in his voice made Maya's chest tight. "I'm sorry. I was hurt and scared and I thought I was protecting all of us." "We both made mistakes," David said gently. "The question is, what do we do now?" Maya took a shaky breath. "I don't know how to tell her. She's asked about her father for years, but I've always deflected. How do I explain that I kept him away because of a misunderstanding?" "We tell her together," David suggested. "We tell her the truth, that we cared about each other, that circumstances separated us, and that we're trying to figure out how to be a family now. She might be angry. At both of us. She might be. But she's also smart and loving if she's anything like her mother. She'll understand eventually." Maya felt tears threatening. "David, I need you to understand something. I've been her whole world for 12 years. I've made every decision, handled every crisis, been there for every triumph and disappointment. I can't just step aside and let you take over." "I don't want to take over," David said earnestly. "I want to learn from you. You've done an amazing job raising her alone. I can see that just from the few minutes I spent with her yesterday. She's confident, polite, curious, happy. That's all because of you. But you're her father. You have rights. I have responsibilities, David corrected. The right to be in her life is something I have to earn. From both of you. Maya studied his face, seeing the sincerity there. What do you want, David? Really? I want to know my daughter. I want to be part of her life, help with homework, attend school plays, teach her to drive someday. I want to support you both, not just financially but emotionally. I want us to be a family, however that looks. He paused, then added quietly, and I want to see if what we had 12 years ago is still there. Maya's heart skipped. David. I know it's complicated. I know we can't just pick up where we left off. But Maya, I never stopped loving you. Even when I thought you'd chosen to disappear, even when I tried to move on with other people, it was always you. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and fear. Maya felt the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crack. I need to think about this. About all of it. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Maya, can I ask one favor? What? Can I see her again? Maybe we could all have dinner somewhere casual. I don't have to tell her who I am yet, but I'd like to spend time with her. Get to know her a little before we have the big conversation. Maya considered this. It seemed reasonable, a way to ease into the situation rather than dropping a bombshell on Zoe. Okay. But we go slow. And if she seems uncomfortable at any point, we stop. Agreed. They arranged to meet at a family restaurant the following Saturday. As they prepared to leave the cafe, David reached across the table and gently touched Maya's hand. Thank you for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it. We all deserve a chance to make things right, Maya said softly. Saturday arrived faster than Maya expected. She changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on a simple blue dress that Zoe declared perfect. Zoe herself had chosen her favorite outfit, a purple sweater and jeans with her hair pulled back in a ponytail that showed off her distinctive cowlick. David was already waiting when they arrived at the restaurant, and Maya's heart did that familiar skip when she saw him. He dressed casually, khakis and a button-down shirt, but he still looked every inch the successful businessman. When he saw them approaching, his face lit up with genuine joy. Zoe. I'm so glad you could come, he said, standing to greet them. Thanks for inviting us, Mr. Sterling. Mama said you don't have much family here. That must be lonely. David's eyes met Maya's over Zoe's head, and she saw the emotion there. It has been lonely, but I'm hoping that might change. Dinner was a revelation. David was wonderful with Zoe, asking about her interests, listening intently to her stories about school and friends. He told her about his work in renewable energy, explaining complex concepts in ways that made her eyes light up with understanding. So you're basically helping save the planet? Zoe asked, clearly impressed. I'm trying to. It's important work, but it's even more important when I think about the world we're leaving for the next generation. Maya watched them together, seeing the easy rapport developing between father and daughter. Zoe was completely at ease with David, chattering away about her marine biology dreams and her latest science project. David hung on every word, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own childhood fascination with the ocean. I always wanted to be a marine biologist too, David admitted. But I got sidetracked by business. Maybe you can teach me about ocean conservation sometime. Really? That would be awesome. I have tons of books about coral reefs and whale migration patterns. I'd love to see them. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself relaxing for the first time in days. This felt natural, right? Like the family they could have been all along. After dinner, as they walked to their cars, Zoe surprised them both. Mr. Sterling, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think my daddy would be proud of me? Mama says he can't be with us, but sometimes I wonder if he knows about me, if he'd like the person I'm becoming. Maya's heart stopped. David knelt down to Zoe's eye level, his voice gentle but firm. Zoe, any father would be incredibly proud to have a daughter like you. You're smart, kind, and curious about the world. You care about important things like protecting the ocean. You're respectful to adults and clearly love your mother very much. Trust me, your father would be the proudest man in the world. Zoe beamed at him. Thanks, Mr. Sterling. That makes me feel better. As they said their goodbyes, David caught Maya's eye. Soon? He asked quietly. Maya nodded. Soon. She deserves to know. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a routine that felt surprisingly natural. David would pick Zoe up from school twice a week, helping with homework and taking her to dinner. On weekends, they would spend time together as a family, going to museums, hiking, or simply hanging out at David's house. Maya watched in amazement as David embraced fatherhood with the same dedication he brought to everything else. He learned Zoe's schedule, her favorite foods, her friends' names. He attended her school science fair and cheered louder than anyone when she won second place. He read every book about marine biology he could find so he could keep up with her passion for ocean conservation. But it was the quiet moments that touched Maya's heart the most. David teaching Zoe to play chess, both of them frowning in concentration with identical expressions. David braiding Zoe's hair for school, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he worked. Zoe falling asleep against David's shoulder during a movie, both of them looking completely content. As for Maya and David, they were rediscovering each other slowly, carefully. The attraction was still there, stronger than ever, if anything, but they were both determined to build something lasting this time. They talked for hours about everything they'd missed, sharing stories from the past 12 years, dreams for the future. "I never stopped loving you," David told her one evening as they sat on his back porch while Zoe played in the garden. "Even when I thought you'd chosen to leave, even when I tried to convince myself to move on. It was always you." "I loved you too," Maya admitted. "I tried so hard to hate you, to convince myself that what we had wasn't real. But every time I looked at Zoe, I saw you. I saw the man who had been so gentle with me, so kind. I couldn't reconcile that with someone who would abandon us. We lost so much time," David said sadly. "But we found each other again. That's what matters." It was during this period of rebuilding that Maya made a decision that would nearly destroy everything they'd worked for. She decided it was time to tell Zoe the truth about her father. But before she could arrange the conversation with David, fate intervened in the cruelest possible way. Maya was at work when her assistant knocked on her door looking troubled. "Maya, there's a courier here with some legal documents for you. He says you need to sign for them personally." Maya's blood ran cold as she accepted the certified envelope. The Sterling family law firm's letterhead was embossed in gold, and the contents were devastating. A formal petition for custody of Zoe Sterling, filed by David Sterling as the biological father, claiming Maya Johnson was an unfit mother who had deliberately kept his child from him for 12 years. Maya's hands trembled as she read the legal document. The signature at the bottom was unmistakably David's. She'd seen him sign enough school forms and permission slips over the past few weeks to recognize his distinctive handwriting. The petition painted her as a manipulative woman who had trapped a wealthy man with a secret pregnancy, then disappeared to extort money later. It claimed she was financially unstable, had provided an inadequate home environment, and had psychologically damaged the child by lying about her father's identity. But the cruelest part was a personal note attached, written on David's personal letterhead. "Maya, I'm sorry it has to be this way, but Zoe deserves better than what you can provide. She belongs with her real family now. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. David." Maya sank into her office chair, the papers scattered across her desk like the remnants of her shattered dreams. How could she have been so naive? How could she have believed that David Sterling had actually changed, that he could love someone like her? Rich people didn't change. They just got better at hiding their true nature. When her phone rang with David's ringtone, Maya stared at it with disgust before declining the call. It rang again immediately. And again. By the fifth call, Maya turned the phone off entirely. That evening, when Zoe asked why Daddy wasn't coming for dinner as planned, Maya had to excuse herself to the bathroom to cry. How was she supposed to tell her 12-year-old daughter that the father she'd just learned to love was trying to take her away? "Mama, you're scaring me," Zoe said when Maya finally emerged, her eyes red and swollen. "What's wrong? Where's Daddy?" The word Daddy hit Maya like a physical blow. Zoe had started calling David that just last week, and he'd cried with joy when she did. Now it felt like a knife twisting in Maya's heart. "Sweetheart, we need to talk." Maya sat down beside her daughter, her heart breaking at the trust and innocence in Zoe's eyes. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that hurt the people they're supposed to love. What kind of decisions? Maya took a shaky breath. "David has decided that he wants you to live with him instead of me." Zoe's face went white. "What? But I don't want to live without you, Mama. I want us all to live together like a real family." "I know, baby. I know. Can't you just tell him no? You're my mom." Maya pulled Zoe into her arms, holding her tight as her daughter began to cry. "It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. David has lawyers and they're going to try to convince a judge that you'd be better off with him. But that's not true. You're the best mom in the world. You've taken care of me my whole life." "I know, baby. And I'm going to fight for you. I promise." Over the next few days, David's calls and texts became increasingly desperate. Maya deleted them all without reading or listening. She couldn't bear to hear his voice making excuses, trying to justify what he was doing to their family. Maya hired the best family attorney she could afford, which wasn't saying much on a social worker's salary. Jennifer Walsh was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in custody cases involving wealthy fathers. "I have to be honest with you, Maya," Jennifer said during their first meeting. "David Sterling has unlimited resources. He can drag this out for years, appeal every decision, make your life hell. Are you prepared for that?" "He's not taking my daughter," Maya said firmly. "I don't care what it costs or how long it takes." "Good. Because we're going to need character witnesses, documentation of your relationship with Zoe, proof that you've been a good mother. We need to show the court that despite his money, you're the better parent." Meanwhile, David was going out of his mind trying to reach Maya. He'd shown up at her apartment building, but the security guard wouldn't let him up. He'd gone to her workplace, but she'd refused to see him. He'd even tried waiting outside Zoe's school, but Maya had apparently made arrangements for someone else to pick her up. What the hell is going on? David demanded when he stormed into his mother's office at Sterling Enterprises. "Maya won't take my calls, won't see me. Zoe's not at school when I try to pick her up. It's like they've disappeared." Eleanor Sterling looked up from her desk with cool satisfaction. "Perhaps she's finally realized that she doesn't belong in our world, darling." "What did you do, Mother?" "I did what was necessary to protect this family's interests." David's blood ran cold. "What did you do?" Eleanor opened her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. "I had our attorneys file for custody of your daughter. It's time that child was raised properly, with the advantages that come with the Sterling name." "You did what?" David's voice was a roar that made his mother's assistant peek nervously through the door. "Don't take that tone with me, David. That woman kept your child from you for 12 years. She's clearly unfit. I never authorized any custody filing. You had no right." Eleanor's smile was cold and triumphant. "Actually, I did. As your mother and a concerned grandmother, I have every right to petition for custody of my granddaughter. Especially when her mother is clearly using her to manipulate you." David stared at his mother in horror. "Maya thinks I filed for custody. That's why she won't talk to me." "Good. Maybe now she'll disappear again and save us all the trouble of a court battle." "You forged my signature, didn't you?" David's voice was deadly quiet. "You made it look like the petition came from me." Eleanor didn't deny it. "I did what was best for this family. That child belongs with us, not with some gold-digging social worker who—" David slammed his hand on his mother's desk so hard that her coffee cup jumped. "That woman is the love of my life, and that child is my daughter. If you think I'm going to let you destroy my family again, you're insane. David, be reasonable. Think about what you're throwing away." "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm choosing what matters." David straightened his tie, his decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. "I'm going to that hearing, Mother. And I'm going to tell the judge exactly what kind of people you really are." Eleanor's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare. Watch me." The family court hearing was scheduled for a gray Monday morning in November. Maya sat in the sterile courtroom beside her attorney, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Across the aisle, the Sterling family's legal team occupied an entire row, 3 attorneys in expensive suits, armed with briefcases full of documents designed to prove she was an unfit mother. Eleanor Sterling sat in the front row behind her lawyers, dressed in an elegant navy suit that probably cost more than Maya's monthly salary. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, every inch the picture of refined wealth and respectability. She looked like the kind of grandmother any judge would want to award custody to. Maya had barely slept in the 2 weeks since receiving the custody papers. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw David's signature on those documents, heard his voice in her head saying Zoe deserved better than what she could provide. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she'd experienced, even deeper than finding out about his supposed engagement 12 years ago. "Remember," Jennifer whispered as they waited for the judge to enter, "stay calm, answer only what's asked, and don't let them provoke you. They're going to try to paint you as emotional and unstable." Maya nodded, glancing back at the gallery where her mother sat with Zoe. Her daughter looked terrified, clutching her grandmother's hand and staring at the imposing courtroom with wide, frightened eyes. Maya had tried to explain what was happening in age-appropriate terms, but how do you tell a 12-year-old that her father wants to take her away from the only parent she's ever known? "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison," the bailiff announced. Judge Morrison was a stern-looking woman in her 60s with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She settled behind the bench and reviewed the case file with practiced efficiency. This is a petition for custody modification in the matter of Sterling versus Johnson, regarding the minor child Zoe Johnson, Judge Morrison began. I understand this is an unusual case involving a child whose paternity was recently established. Mr. Hendricks, you may present your opening statement on behalf of the petitioner. The lead Sterling attorney, a silver-haired man who radiated expensive confidence, stood and approached the bench. Your Honor, this case is about a child who has been deliberately kept from her father's family for 12 years. My client, Mrs. Eleanor Sterling, is seeking custody of her granddaughter Zoe on behalf of her son, David Sterling, who only recently discovered the child's existence. Maya's stomach churned as Hendricks painted her as a manipulative woman who had trapped a wealthy man and then disappeared to avoid responsibility. He spoke about the Sterling family's resources, their ability to provide Zoe with the best education, healthcare, and opportunities that money could buy. The respondent, Ms. Johnson, is a single mother working as a social worker, living in a modest apartment with limited means. While we don't question her love for the child, love alone cannot provide the advantages that the Sterling family can offer. This child deserves to know her heritage, to be raised with the privileges and opportunities that come with the Sterling name. When it was Jennifer's turn, she stood with quiet dignity. Your Honor, this case is not about money or privilege. It's about a mother who has raised her daughter alone for 12 years, providing a loving, stable home environment. Zoe Johnson is a happy, well-adjusted child who excels in school and has strong bonds with her mother and extended family. To remove her from the only home she's ever known would be traumatic and harmful to her well-being. The proceedings continued with witness testimony. Eleanor Sterling took the stand first, presenting herself as the concerned grandmother who only wanted what was best for her granddaughter. She spoke eloquently about the Sterling family's philanthropic work, their commitment to education, their desire to provide Zoe with opportunities she could never have otherwise. Mrs. Sterling, Jennifer said during cross-examination, when did you first learn of Zoe's existence? Approximately 3 weeks ago when my son informed the family. And how long after learning about her did you file this custody petition? Eleanor's composure slipped slightly. We felt it was important to act quickly in the child's best interests. So within days of learning you had a granddaughter, your first instinct was to try to take her away from her mother? Objection, Hendricks called out. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Morrison ruled, but Maya could see the judge was paying close attention. Maya's turn on the stand was grueling. The Sterling attorneys questioned every aspect of her life, her finances, her work schedule, her dating history, her decision to keep Zoe's paternity secret. They made her sound irresponsible, vindictive, and motivated by greed. Ms. Johnson, Hendricks said with barely concealed disdain, isn't it true that you only revealed Mr. Sterling's paternity when you discovered his wealth and success? No, that's not true. I never intended to tell him at all. We only met by accident at Zoe's school. How convenient. And now you're engaged to Mr. Sterling, correct? Maya's heart clenched. We were engaged. That's over now. Because he chose his family's interests over yours? Objection. Jennifer stood quickly. Relevance. I'll allow it, Judge Morrison said, her eyes fixed on Maya. Maya took a shaky breath. Because I discovered he filed for custody behind my back while pretending to love us both. The courtroom was silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's fingers on her machine. Maya could feel Eleanor Sterling's satisfied smile from across the room. As the morning wore on, Maya felt her hopes slipping away. The Sterling attorneys were skilled, their arguments polished, their resources unlimited. How could she compete with that? Then, just as Judge Morrison was about to call for a lunch recess, the courtroom doors burst open. David Sterling strode down the center aisle, his face thunderous, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. His tie was askew, his hair messed from running his hands through it, and his eyes blazed with fury. Your Honor, he called out, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned courtroom. I need to address this court immediately. The entire room erupted. Eleanor Sterling went white as a sheet. The attorneys began talking over each other. Judge Morrison banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. Order in my courtroom. Judge Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. Mr. Sterling, I presume? You're out of order. Take a seat and wait your turn. Your Honor, with all due respect, I can't wait. This entire proceeding is based on fraud. David's voice was steady now, but Maya could see the rage simmering beneath the surface. I never filed for custody of my daughter. I never authorized any legal action against Ms. Johnson. My signature was forged. The courtroom exploded again. Eleanor Sterling looked like she might faint. Hendricks was frantically whispering to his colleagues. Maya felt her world tilt as David's words sank in. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Morrison said sternly, "these are serious allegations. Are you saying you did not sign the custody petition?" "That's exactly what I'm saying, Your Honor. My mother forged my signature and filed this petition without my knowledge or consent. I've been trying to reach Ms. Johnson for 2 weeks to explain, but she understandably won't speak to me because she believes I betrayed her." David turned to look directly at Maya, his eyes filled with pain and desperation. "Maya, I would never try to take Zoe away from you. You're the most incredible mother I've ever seen. Our daughter is lucky to have you, and so am I." Maya felt tears streaming down her face as the truth crashed over her. David hadn't betrayed them. He'd been as much a victim of his mother's manipulation as they had been. Judge Morrison was studying the custody documents with new interest. "Mr. Hendricks, did your client inform you that she was filing this petition without her son's knowledge?" Hendricks looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Your Honor, we were led to believe that Mr. Sterling was unable to file personally due to business commitments." "That's a lie," David said flatly. "My mother told me nothing about this filing. I discovered it purely by accident when I confronted her about why Maya wouldn't speak to me." Eleanor Sterling finally found her voice. "David, you don't understand what that woman is doing to you." "What I understand, Mother, is that you forged legal documents and destroyed my relationship with the woman I love and the daughter I adore." David's voice was ice cold. "What I understand is that you're so desperate to control my life that you're willing to traumatize a 12-year-old child." Judge Morrison set down the documents and fixed Eleanor Sterling with a withering stare. "Mrs. Sterling, if these allegations are true, you have committed fraud upon this court. Mr. Hendricks, I'm dismissing this petition immediately. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into the circumstances of this filing." "Your Honor," David said, his voice gentler now, "I'd like to make a statement for the record." "Proceed." David looked at Maya, then at Zoe in the gallery, then back at the judge. "Your Honor, I love Maya Johnson and our daughter Zoe more than anything in this world. Maya has been an extraordinary mother, raising our daughter alone while I was absent through no fault of my own. If anyone is unfit in this situation, it's the Sterling family for trying to tear apart a loving family for their own selfish purposes." He turned to face his mother directly. "I renounce any claim to the Sterling inheritance or business interests. I choose my real family, Maya and Zoe, over the people who would hurt them." The courtroom was dead silent. Eleanor Sterling looked like she'd been slapped. Maya was crying openly now, her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. "Furthermore," David continued, "I'm prepared to sign any legal document necessary to ensure that my mother and the Sterling family have no claim to custody or visitation rights regarding my daughter. They've proven today that they cannot be trusted with a child's well-being." Judge Morrison nodded slowly. "Mr. Sterling, your statement is noted for the record. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. Mrs. Sterling, you will be hearing from the district attorney's office regarding the forged documents." As the gavel came down, Maya felt like she could breathe for the first time in 2 weeks. David had chosen them. He'd chosen love over money, family over fortune, truth over manipulation. But before she could process what happened next, Zoe broke free from her grandmother's hand and ran down the aisle toward David. "Daddy," she cried, throwing herself into his arms. "I was so scared they were going to take me away from Mama." David caught her, holding her tight as tears streamed down his face. "Never, Princess. I will never let anyone take you away from your mother. We're a family, all 3 of us, and nothing will ever change that." Maya stood on shaky legs, Jennifer's hand steadying her as she made her way toward David and Zoe. When she reached them, David looked up at her with eyes full of love and regret. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what she was going to go through with it. I've been going crazy trying to reach you." "I know," Maya whispered, reaching out to touch his face. "I know now. I should have trusted you. You had every reason not to trust me. My family has hurt you twice now. But Maya, I swear to you, I will never let them hurt you or Zoe again." David stood, still holding Zoe, and faced Maya fully. "I meant what I said in there. I choose you. I choose our family. I don't need their money or their approval. All I need is you and Zoe. But your company, your inheritance. I'll build something new. Something that's ours, that's clean. Maya, I've been successful before and I can be successful again. But I can't be happy without you." Maya looked at this man who had just given up everything for her and their daughter, who had stood up to his own family in a courtroom full of people, who had chosen love over everything else he'd ever known. I love you, she whispered. I never stopped loving you. David's face broke into the most beautiful smile she'd ever seen. I love you too. Both of you. Forever. He leaned down and kissed her then, right there in the courtroom, while Zoe giggled and the few remaining spectators applauded. It was a kiss that tasted of tears and hope and new beginnings. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, Maya walked down the aisle of a small chapel surrounded by family and friends. Zoe served as her maid of honor, beaming with pride in her pale pink dress. David waited at the altar, looking more handsome than ever in his black tuxedo, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. David had been true to his word. He'd started his own renewable energy company, Sterling Johnson Enterprises, with Maya as his equal partner. The business was thriving, built on the foundation of their shared values and commitment to making the world better for the next generation. Eleanor Sterling had been charged with fraud and forgery. The scandal had rocked the Sterling family empire, but David felt no regret. He'd built something better, something honest, something that would make Zoe proud to carry on their legacy. The ceremony was simple but perfect. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to cherish the family they had found, to never let misunderstandings come between them again, and to love each other through whatever challenges life might bring. You may kiss the bride, the minister announced, and David did, thoroughly and joyfully, while Zoe cheered and the congregation applauded. At the reception, David gave a speech that left hardly a dry eye in the room. 13 years ago, I met a woman who changed my life in a single evening. I thought I had lost her forever, but love has a way of bringing people back together when they're meant to be. Maya, you gave me the greatest gift imaginable, not just your love but our daughter. Zoe, you are the light of my life and I promise to spend every day making up for the time we lost. To my new family, this is just the beginning of our happily ever after. As they danced their first dance as a married couple, Maya looked around at their wedding reception, at Zoe dancing with David's brother, the only Sterling family member who had supported their relationship, at their friends and family celebrating their love, at the life they had built together from the ashes of heartbreak and misunderstanding. No regrets. David whispered in her ear as they swayed to the music. Maya looked up at her husband, this man who had waited 12 years to find her again, who had embraced fatherhood with such joy and dedication, who loved her and their daughter with his whole heart. No regrets, she said firmly. Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. We have our family, we have our love, and we have the rest of our lives to make new memories together. I love you, Mrs. Sterling Johnson, David said, spinning her around as the song ended. I love you too, Mr. Sterling Johnson. Both of you. Forever. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a family trip to Hawaii where Zoe could finally see the coral reefs she'd been studying, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Sometimes the greatest love stories began with the most painful misunderstandings. Sometimes you had to lose everything to realize what truly mattered. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, love really did find a way. Their story had come full circle, from a magical night that created life, through years of separation and heartbreak, to a reunion that proved some bonds are too strong to break. Maya, David, and Zoe Sterling Johnson were finally the family they were always meant to be. Love, forgiveness, and second chances, these are the forces that can transform our lives in the most beautiful ways. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who believes in true love, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the power of family, hope, and happily ever after. Remember, it's never too late for love to find its way home. And as they drove away from their wedding reception, with Zoe chattering excitedly about their upcoming honeymoon and David's hand warm in hers, Maya knew that some fairy tales really do come true. They just take a little longer than expected to reach their happy ending. Welcome back, family. I'm so excited about today's story. I have a feeling you'll love it just as much as I do. So make sure you stay with me till the end. To my incredible subscribers, thank you for making this channel a place where romance meets real-life lessons. Your support means everything. And if you're new here, I'm your host, Mr. Ashbourne. Go ahead and click that subscribe button to join a family of story lovers who believe in love, redemption, and second chances. Now tell me, do you believe people can truly change? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts about second chances in love. Now, let's dive in. The steak was medium rare. The wine, a limited edition Bordeaux that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The restaurant? La Maison du Verre, exclusive enough to require a 2-week screening before a reservation could even be considered. And yet Caleb Holt hadn't tasted a single bite. He sat beneath the chandelier lighting, one hand scrolling through a board acquisition contract on his tablet, the other absently turning the stem of his wine glass. To the rest of the world he looked like the embodiment of controlled power, a 41-year-old tech magnate with more money than time, eating alone by choice, not by consequence. His phone buzzed. Another merger proposal. Another opportunity to expand his empire. But behind that composed stare was a man too disciplined for regrets and too broken to admit he had any. The whispers started first. Nervous murmurs from the staff. Then the maitre d's voice, strained and apologetic. "Sir, excuse me, young man, you can't?" A small figure ducked around the suited man with practiced ease. Caleb looked up from his tablet, irritation flickering across his features. But the words died in his throat. A little boy stood at his table. Maybe 5 years old. Curly hair that fell slightly over his forehead. Worn jeans and a red hoodie with a small rip near the collar. His small hand gripped a toy car tightly, knuckles white with determination. The child didn't speak. Just stood there, studying Caleb with an intensity that made the powerful CEO shift uncomfortably in his seat. "Are you lost?" Caleb asked, his voice quieter than usual. The boy tilted his head, examining Caleb the same way Caleb once studied hostile investors, carefully, silently, searching for something. And then the boy turned his head slightly. Caleb's blood froze. Behind the child's left ear, barely visible beneath the curls, was a crescent-shaped birthmark. Small, distinctive, unmistakable. The same birthmark Caleb had carried his entire life. A hereditary skin pigment anomaly so rare that doctors had told him it appeared in less than 1% of the population. The tablet slipped from his fingers, clattering against the marble table. "Leo." The voice cut through the air like a blade. Caleb's head snapped up, and the world tilted off its axis. "Isla Monroe." She rushed toward them, her heels clicking against the polished floor. She looked older, sharper, but not colder. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and she wore a navy dress that spoke of success and independence. She hadn't seen him yet. Her focus was entirely on the boy. "Baby, I told you to wait by the hostess stand," she said, crouching to eye level with the child. "He was here," Leo said, pointing directly at Caleb. Isla's head turned slowly. Their eyes met across the space between them. The silence stretched like a wire drawn tight between two cliffs, ready to snap. "Caleb," she breathed, and her voice carried every emotion she'd buried for years. He stood slowly, every movement deliberate and measured. His hands were steady. His pulse was not. "Isla." Her name felt foreign on his tongue after so long. She rose to her feet, instinctively pulling Leo closer to her side. "We should go." "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "I need to speak with you. Now's not a good time." "Is he mine?" The question cut through the elegant restaurant like shattered glass. Conversations at nearby tables faltered. The very air seemed to hold its breath. Isla's face went pale. "Caleb." "The birthmark," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Behind his ear. I have the same one." Leo looked between them, confusion clouding his young features. "Mommy? Who is he?" Isla's hands trembled as she smoothed Leo's hair. "I'll explain later, sweetheart." But Caleb couldn't look away from the boy. Couldn't unsee the birthmark. Couldn't ignore the timeline that was crystallizing in his mind with brutal clarity. "You left without a word," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You disappeared from my life, from the company, from everything. That was 5 years and 8 months ago," Isla finished quietly. Leo tugged at his mother's dress. "Mommy, I'm hungry." "I know, baby. We'll get our table in just a minute." Caleb's world was crumbling around him, but he forced himself to focus on the child. His son. The word felt impossible and inevitable at the same time. "What's your favorite dinosaur?" Caleb asked suddenly. Leo's eyes lit up. "Triceratops. They have 3 horns and they're really strong." "They're herbivores," Caleb said automatically. "Plant eaters." "You know dinosaurs?" Leo asked, stepping closer despite Isla's gentle attempt to keep him back. I used to. When I was your age." "Leo, come on," Isla said, her voice strained. "Our table is ready." But Leo was already extending his toy car toward Caleb. "This is my favorite. It's red like fire trucks." Caleb took the small car with hands that shook imperceptibly. "It's beautiful. You can hold it while we eat," Leo said with the generous heart of a child who hadn't yet learned that the world could be cruel. "Leo, no," Isla said firmly. "We need to go." She took Leo's hand, but Caleb stood. "Please," he said, and the word came out broken. "Just give me 5 minutes. After dinner. Please." Isla stared at him for a long moment, seeing something in his eyes that made her defenses waver. "The parking garage," she said finally. "Level B2. After we're done." She turned to leave, but Caleb called after her. "Isla." She paused without turning around. "Thank you. For him. For everything." Her shoulders tensed, but she didn't respond. She simply walked away, leading their son toward a table across the restaurant. Caleb sank back into his chair, the toy car still clutched in his palm. His untouched steak had gone cold. His wine sat forgotten. For the first time in his adult life, Caleb Holt had no idea what came next. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Everything had just changed. What would you do if you discovered you had a child you never knew existed? The comments below are for you to share your thoughts about unexpected fatherhood and second chances. The parking garage felt like a tomb. Concrete walls echoed every footstep, every breath, every unspoken word hanging between them. Caleb stood beside his matte black Aston Martin, still clutching Leo's toy car. He'd been waiting for 20 minutes, his mind racing through every possible conversation, every question, every apology he'd rehearsed and discarded. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Isla walked out carrying Leo, his small head resting against her shoulder. The boy's eyes were heavy with sleep, one arm wrapped around his mother's neck, the other dangling loosely at his side. "I'm not running," she said before Caleb could speak. "Good," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "Because I have questions." Leo's weight, and Caleb noticed the practiced ease of the movement. 5 years of being the only parent. 5 years of bedtimes and breakfast, scraped knees and story time, all without him. "Why didn't you tell me?" The words came out rougher than he intended. Isla's expression hardened. "Because the last time I offered you something real, Caleb, you said time was a luxury you couldn't afford. So I stopped offering." The memory hit him like a physical blow. Her face across his office desk, hope shining in her eyes as she talked about wanting more than late nights and conference calls. How he dismissed her dreams as distractions. "I wasn't going to beg you to be someone you weren't," she continued, brushing Leo's hair back with gentle fingers. "I didn't know. You didn't ask." Her voice carried years of buried hurt. "You made your choice. I made mine." Leo stirred in her arms, mumbling something about dinosaurs before settling back into sleep. "He's beautiful," Caleb whispered. "He's everything." Isla's voice softened as she looked at their son. "Smart, funny, curious about everything. He builds these elaborate cities with his blocks and makes up stories about the people who live there. Does he ask about me?" Isla was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes. I tell him his daddy lives far away but thinks about him every day. But I didn't know." "I know." She met his eyes. "But he doesn't need to know that. Not yet." The next morning, Caleb stood outside Isla's apartment building, coffee growing cold in his hands. He'd driven past 3 times before finally parking, rehearsing words that felt inadequate for the magnitude of what he'd discovered. The building wasn't what he'd expected. Modest, well-maintained, with a small playground visible through the courtyard where children's laughter echoed off brick walls. He knocked. Isla opened the door wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like this, more like the woman he'd once known. "Leo's at school," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "I'm not here for him." She raised an eyebrow. "You're here for?" "You." The apartment was small but warm. Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked the courtyard. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Toys were scattered across the living room floor in the organized chaos of a home where a child was loved. Isla gestured to the couch. "Coffee? Please." She moved through the kitchen with efficient grace, and Caleb found himself watching her hands as she prepared the coffee. The same hands that had once sketched product designs in his conference room, that had touched his face with such tenderness he'd almost believed he could be worthy of it. "You want the truth?" she asked, not turning around. "Yes." She brought 2 mugs to the living room, setting one in front of him before settling into the chair across from him. Not the couch. The distance was deliberate. "I loved you," she said simply. "Back then. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd love me back. Not with flowers or poetry. But with time. With presence. With choice." Her voice cracked slightly. "But when I told you I wanted a life, not just a ladder to climb, you shut down. You made me feel small for dreaming bigger than deadlines." Caleb's hands tightened around his mug. "Isla. I'm not done." She held up a hand. "I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you ended things. 3 weeks after you told me that emotional attachments were liabilities you couldn't afford. The words hit him like physical blows. He remembered that conversation, remembered the clinical way he dismissed what they had as complicated and unprofessional. "I wanted to tell you," she continued. "I stood outside your office for an hour rehearsing how to say it. But I couldn't stop thinking about what you'd said. About how you saw emotion as weakness and love as distraction." Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. "I didn't want Leo to feel like a burden. I didn't want you resenting him the way you resented anything that slowed you down." Caleb stood abruptly, walking to the window. The view showed the playground where children ran and played, their joy uncomplicated by the weight of adult mistakes. "You were right," he said, his voice thick. "What?" "You were right about me. About everything." He turned to face her. "I was so afraid of needing anyone, of being vulnerable, that I pushed away the only person who ever made me feel human. Caleb, I built an empire, Isla. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I have power that moves markets and influences industries. And I eat dinner alone in restaurants that cost more than most people's cars because I convinced myself that was success." He sat back down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "But you know what I realized when I saw him yesterday? When I saw our son looking at me with your eyes and my birthmark?" She waited. "I realized I've been living like a dead man. Going through the motions of what I thought life should look like while missing everything that actually mattered." "And what's that?" "This." He gestured around the apartment. "The drawings on the fridge. The toys on the floor. The way you light up when you talk about him. The way he gets excited about dinosaurs. That's life, Isla. That's what I was too stupid to see." Isla wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You can't just show up now and expect." "I'm not expecting anything," he interrupted. "I'm asking for the chance to earn it. To earn the right to be his father. To earn the right to be worthy of what you offered me once. And if I say no, then I'll respect that. But I'll also keep trying. Because that little boy deserves to know his father wants him. And you." He swallowed hard. "You deserved better than the man I was. Maybe I can't change the past, but I can change who I am moving forward." The silence stretched between them, filled with 5 years of hurt and hope, of dreams deferred and second chances that felt too fragile to trust. Finally Isla spoke. "He comes home from school at 3:30. You can meet him properly then. But Caleb?" "Yes." "One disappointment. One broken promise. One sign that you're the same man who chose his empire over everything else and you're gone. I won't let you break his heart the way you broke mine." The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders like a mantle. "I understand." "Do you?" "Because being a parent isn't a project you can manage or a problem you can solve. It's showing up every day even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when it costs you everything else." "I know. We'll see." "How far would you go to prove you've changed? Love sometimes requires us to sacrifice everything we thought we wanted for what we actually need." At 3:25 p.m., Caleb sat in his car outside Leo's school, his hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. He'd canceled 3 board meetings and rescheduled a merger negotiation that his CFO had called career suicide. None of that mattered now. Through the windshield, he watched children pour out of the red brick building, their voices creating a symphony of innocent chaos. Backpacks bounced, sneakers squeaked against pavement, and parents called out names with the practiced ease of routine. Then he saw him. Leo emerged from the building, his red hoodie bright against the afternoon sun. He moved with the unhurried confidence of a child who knew exactly where he was going and who would be waiting, his expensive suit feeling ridiculous among the casual clothes of other parents. "Leo." The boy turned and his face lit up with recognition. "Carman. You came back." "Carman?" Caleb repeated, confused. "You held my car yesterday," Leo explained, running toward him. "Mommy said you might come to school pickup." Isla appeared moments later, slightly out of breath. "Sorry he saw you and took off running." "It's okay." Caleb crouched down to Leo's level. "How was school today?" "We learned about penguins. Did you know they can swim really, really fast but they can't fly?" "I did know that." "Did you know emperor penguins are the only animals that can survive Antarctic winters?" Leo's eyes widened. "Really? How?" "They huddle together in groups of thousands, taking turns moving to the center where it's warmer." "That's so cool. Are you really smart?" Caleb glanced at Isla, who was watching their interaction with guarded curiosity. "I know some things. But I bet you know things I don't." "Like what?" "Like, what's the best way to make friends?" Leo considered this seriously. "You share your snacks. And you say sorry when you're mean. And you always help if someone falls down." That's very wise advice. Mommy taught me that. The next few weeks became a careful dance of small moments and tentative trust. Caleb started showing up everywhere. School pickup. Grocery store trips. The playground where Leo conquered monkey bars with determined concentration. You don't have to come to everything, Isla said one afternoon as they watched Leo feed ducks at the pond. I want to. Caleb tossed a piece of bread into the water. I missed 5 years. I don't want to miss another day. But your company is fine without me for a few hours. He looked at her. I've been doing this wrong for so long, Isla. I built a life around avoiding exactly this. This? Caring about someone more than myself. Being needed. Being responsible for someone else's happiness. Leo ran back to them, his shoes squelching with pond water. Did you see how many ducks came? I counted 12. That's a lot of ducks, Caleb agreed. Are you hungry? We could get ice cream. Can we, Mommy? Please? Isla hesitated, then nodded. 1 scoop. 2 scoops, Caleb countered with a smile. Deal? Leo cheered, grabbing both their hands. As they walked toward the ice cream truck, Caleb felt something he hadn't experienced in years: contentment. Not the sharp satisfaction of closing a deal or the adrenaline rush of competition. Just peace. The transformation wasn't always smooth. One evening, Caleb's phone rang during bedtime stories. Without thinking, he answered. Caleb Holt. Sir, we need your approval on the Singapore expansion. Dad. Leo's small voice cut through the business jargon. You said you'd finished the dragon story. Caleb looked at his son, then at Isla standing in the doorway with disappointment written across her face. I have to go, he said into the phone and hung up. But sir. Caleb turned off his phone entirely. Where were we? The dragon was guarding the castle. Later, after Leo had fallen asleep, Isla found Caleb on the couch, his head in his hands. That was a test, wasn't it? He asked without looking up. No, it was life. She sat beside him. This is what I meant about showing up. Every day. Even when work is calling. I turned off my phone. This time. But what about next time? What happens when the board calls an emergency meeting during his soccer game? When he has a fever and you have a presentation? Caleb lifted his head. Then I choose him. Every time. It's not that simple. It is. His voice carried a conviction that surprised them both. I spent years believing that success meant being indispensable. But I was wrong. Success means being present for the people who need you most. The pivotal moment came 3 weeks later. Caleb sat in his office, facing 12 board members whose expressions ranged from concerned to hostile. The quarterly reports were spread across the mahogany table like evidence in a trial. Your absence has been noted, Chairman Morrison said coldly. 3 missed board meetings. Delayed responses to critical decisions. This isn't the leadership we've come to expect from you, Caleb. I understand your concerns. Do you? Because our shareholders are asking questions. Your personal life cannot interfere with your professional responsibilities. Caleb stood slowly, walking to the window that overlooked the city he'd helped build. 41 floors below, people moved through their lives like ants, each carrying their own dreams and disappointments. I have something to tell you, he said, turning back to the room. I have a son. The silence was deafening. 5 years old. His name is Leo and he likes dinosaurs and red cars and stories about dragons. He's brilliant and kind and he thinks the world is full of magic. Caleb, Morrison warned, personal matters are the only matters that actually matter. Caleb's voice was calm but firm. I've spent 20 years building this company. I've sacrificed relationships, health, happiness, everything that makes life worth living. And for what? So I could die rich and alone? The company needs leadership. The company needs someone who understands that success isn't just about profit margins and market share. It's about building something meaningful. Something that makes the world better for our children. He straightened his tie, a gesture that had once been about power but now felt like armor. I'm restructuring my role. I'll remain as CEO, but I'm delegating day-to-day operations. I'll be present for the decisions that matter, but I won't be a slave to every crisis that someone else can handle. That's not how we do business here, Morrison said. Then maybe it's time we learned a new way. The room erupted in protests, but Caleb was already gathering his things. Meeting adjourned, he said. I have a school play to attend. That evening, Caleb sat in a tiny plastic chair in Leo's school auditorium, watching his son play a tree in the kindergarten production of The Giving Tree. Leo's branches swayed with dramatic flair, and his leaves rustled with each movement. When the boy taking the apples tripped, Leo broke character to help him up, just like he'd learned from his mother. "That's my boy," Caleb whispered, his voice thick with pride. Isla squeezed his hand. "He's been practicing for weeks. I almost missed this. But you didn't." After the play, Leo ran to them, his paper bark costume rustling with excitement. "Did you see me? I was the best tree." "You were magnificent," Caleb said, lifting him up. "I'm so proud of you. Will you come to my next play too? I wouldn't miss it for the world." As they walked to the parking lot, Leo between them, Caleb realized something profound had shifted. For the first time in his adult life, he wasn't planning tomorrow's meetings or calculating profit margins. He was simply walking with his family, carrying his son's paper costume, and thinking about bedtime stories. What does it mean to truly succeed in life? Sometimes the biggest victories happen in the smallest moments. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Caleb was in Isla's kitchen, making pancakes shaped like dinosaurs while Leo sat at the counter, narrating an elaborate story about a triceratops who saved a village from a meteor. And then the triceratops used his super strong horns to push the meteor into space. Leo declared, heroic, waving his Caleb said, flipping a pancake that looked vaguely like a stegosaurus. "Heroes protect the people they love." His phone buzzed against the counter. Morrison's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Isla said quietly from the doorway. She was dressed for work, her hair pulled back, but her eyes were soft as she watched him cook for their son. "I have to." "No, you don't." But Caleb was already swiping to answer. "Morrison. Emergency board meeting. 1 hour. The Singapore deal is falling apart, and the investors are threatening to pull out. We need you here now." Leo looked up from his pancake, syrup dripping from his chin. "Daddy, you said we could go to the zoo today." Caleb's heart clenched. "I know, buddy. The company is hemorrhaging money by the hour," Morrison continued. "Whatever personal crisis you're having needs to take a back seat to business." "Personal crisis?" Caleb's voice went dangerously quiet. "Your midlife meltdown or whatever this is. Playing house with some woman and her kid. It's affecting your judgment." The kitchen went silent except for the sizzle of pancakes on the griddle. "Some woman?" Caleb repeated. "Daddy?" Leo's voice was small, confused. "Are you mad?" Caleb looked at his son, then at Isla, who was watching him with the careful expression of someone bracing for disappointment. "Morrison," he said into the phone, his voice calm. "I quit." "What?" "I quit. Effective immediately. I'm done." "You can't be serious. You built this company. And now I'm choosing something more important." He hung up and turned off his phone. The silence stretched like a held breath. "What did you just do?" Isla whispered. "I chose you," Caleb said simply. "Both of you. I chose this." Leo slid off his stool and wrapped his arms around Caleb's waist. "Does this mean we can still go to the zoo?" "Yes, buddy. We can go to the zoo." "Forever and ever?" "Forever and ever." But forever felt more fragile than Caleb had expected. The next few days brought an avalanche of consequences. Legal teams, severance negotiations, board members trying to convince him he was making the biggest mistake of his life. "You'll regret this," Morrison warned during their final meeting. "You're giving up everything you've worked for." "No," Caleb said, signing the papers that would sever his ties to the company he'd built from nothing. "I'm finally getting everything I've worked for." That evening he sat on Isla's porch steps, watching Leo chase fireflies in the small front yard. The boys' laughter echoed off the surrounding apartments, pure and unself-conscious. "You gave it all up," Isla said, settling beside him. "Your life's work. Your fortune. Your identity." "My fortune is still intact," Caleb said with a wry smile. "Stock options and investments. We won't be poor." "That's not what I meant." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember what you said to me that last day at the office? Before you left?" Isla nodded. "I said you were so afraid of needing anyone that you'd end up with nothing worth having." "You were right. I had everything I thought I wanted and nothing I actually needed. And now? Now I have a son who thinks I'm a hero for making dinosaur pancakes. I have a woman who's given me a second chance I don't deserve. I have bedtime stories and scraped knees and Saturday morning cartoons." He turned to look at her. "I have a life, Isla. A real life." "The board voted you out anyway," she said gently. "I heard it on the news." "I know. Unanimous decision. They couldn't risk having a CEO who prioritized family over profit margins." "Does that hurt?" "Less than I thought it would. More than I expected." He watched Leo successfully catch a firefly, his small hands cupped carefully around the glowing insect. But watching him discover the world? That heals everything. Leo ran over to them, his face flushed with excitement. Look, I caught one. He opened his hands slightly, and the firefly blinked once before flying away into the twilight. It's beautiful, Caleb said. Just like you. Daddy, will you read me a story tonight? Of course. The one about the dragon again? Any story you want. Leo threw his arms around Caleb's neck. I love you, Daddy. The words hit Caleb like a physical force. In all his years of negotiations and acquisitions, he'd never heard anything more valuable. I love you too, buddy. More than all the stars in the sky. After Leo went to bed, Caleb and Isla remained on the porch. The night was warm, filled with the sounds of suburban life. Distant televisions, cars passing, the soft murmur of neighbors talking on their own porches. Can I tell you something? Isla said. Anything. When I left, I was terrified. Pregnant, alone, in love with a man who couldn't love me back. I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But you didn't. No. I made the best decision I could with the information I had. I protected Leo from a father who wasn't ready to be one. I protected myself from heartbreak I couldn't afford. And now? She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the porch light. Now I see a man who walked away from a billion-dollar empire to help his son catch fireflies. A man who makes pancakes shaped like dinosaurs and shows up to every school event and puts his phone away during bedtime stories. You see the man I should have been all along. I see the man you chose to become. The distinction felt important, like the difference between regret and redemption. Isla, he said, his voice uncertain. You didn't fall in love with me when we met. She smiled, recognizing the words from their first conversation. No. But I'm falling now. And this time I don't need promises. I need you to keep choosing us. Every day, he said. Every choice. Every moment. Even when it's hard? Especially when it's hard. She leaned against him, and for the first time in 6 years, Caleb felt complete. So what happens now? She asked. Now I learn to be the father Leo deserves. The partner you deserve. The man I never knew I could be. And the company? Will survive without me. But I wouldn't survive without this. Without you. Without him. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fireflies dance in the darkness, each tiny light a reminder that some of the most beautiful things in life are fragile and fleeting and worth protecting. Caleb? Yeah. Welcome home. The words settled over him like a blessing, like absolution, like the answer to a prayer he'd never known he was praying. Home. Not a place but a choice. Not a destination but a daily commitment to love more than you fear, to choose presence over profit, to believe that some things are worth more than the sum of their parts. He was finally home. Sometimes the greatest success means walking away from everything you thought you wanted to embrace everything you actually need. 6 months later, Caleb Holt wasn't featured in Forbes for another billion-dollar acquisition. He wasn't photographed at exclusive galas or quoted in business magazines about market disruption. Instead, he sat cross-legged on the living room floor of a modest 2-bedroom apartment, surrounded by an elaborate city made entirely of colorful building blocks. Legos covered every surface. The coffee table, the couch cushions, Daddy, even balanced precariously on the windowsill, Leo declared with the patient authority of a 6-year-old architect. The fire station needs to be next to the hospital so they can help people faster. You're absolutely right, Caleb said, carefully moving the red brick structure. What about the school? Where should that go? By the park. Kids need to play after learning. Caleb smiled, adjusting the green baseplate that served as their park. Very wise urban planning. The morning light streamed through windows that overlooked not a city skyline, but a courtyard where children played and neighbors chatted over coffee. The sound of real life, messier, louder, and infinitely more valuable than the sterile silence of corporate boardrooms. Coffee's ready, Isla called from the kitchen. Caleb looked up to find her watching them, wearing one of his old dress shirts over leggings, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. Leo had been up late with a mild fever, but content in a way that made Caleb's chest tight with gratitude. Coming, he said, but Leo grabbed his arm. 5 more minutes? Please? We haven't finished the zoo yet. The zoo can wait, Isla said, but her tone was gentle. Breakfast first. But Mom? But nothing. Food then playtime. That's the rule. Leo sighed dramatically but began gathering his scattered blocks. Will you help me finish after breakfast, Daddy? Of course. We'll build the best zoo in the world. With dinosaurs? especially with dinosaurs. The kitchen was small but warm, filled with the scent of pancakes and fresh coffee. Caleb's laptop sat closed on the counter, a deliberate choice. He'd started a small consulting firm, working with companies that wanted to prioritize employee well-being and work-life balance. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Sleep better last night?" he asked Isla, kissing her temple as she flipped pancakes. "Much." His fever broke around midnight. "Why didn't you wake me?" "Because you had that early call with the Portland client, and one of us being exhausted is better than both of us." Isla. "It's okay," she said, turning to face him. "That's what partnerships look like. We take turns carrying the load." Partnership. The word would have terrified him once. Now it felt like the foundation of everything good in his life. "Besides," she continued with a smile, "you're on sick duty next time. I've paid my dues." "Deal." Leo wandered into the kitchen, his hair sticking up in every direction. "Daddy, Tyler's dad is teaching us soccer this weekend. Can you come?" "Wouldn't miss it. Even if work calls?" "Especially if work calls." Leo grinned and climbed onto his chair. "Good. Tyler says his dad is really good at soccer, but I told him my dad is good at everything." "That's a lot of pressure, buddy." "It's okay. You'll figure it out. You always do." The simple faith in his son's voice made Caleb's throat tighten. Leo had never known him as the cold, driven executive who'd built an empire at the expense of everything else. To Leo he was just Daddy, the man who made dinosaur pancakes and told bedtime stories and showed up to every school event. "What are you thinking about?" Isla asked, noticing his expression. "Just this. All of it." He gestured around the kitchen. "A year ago, I was eating alone in restaurants that cost more than most people's rent. Now I'm sitting in a kitchen with cold coffee and Lego pieces stuck to my shirt, and I've never been happier." "The coffee's not cold," Leo pointed out helpfully. "You're right. It's perfect." After breakfast, while Leo returned to his architectural masterpiece, Caleb found himself standing in the hallway, looking at the photo gallery Isla had created. Pictures of Leo's first steps, his first day of school, Christmas mornings, summer vacations. 5 years of memories that Caleb had missed, but also evidence of the incredible mother Isla had been. "Regrets?" she asked, joining him. "About missing those years?" "Every day. But not about the choice to be here now." "Good. Because there's something I need to tell you." Her tone made him turn. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a gift wrapped in starlight. Are you sure?" "Took the test this morning. I wanted to wait until Leo was at school to tell you." Caleb's hands shook as he reached for her. "How do you feel about it?" "Terrified. Excited. Happy. Worried about how Leo will handle it. Worried about money, about space, about everything." She smiled through tears. "But mostly just grateful. That this time I won't have to do it alone." "Never," he said, pulling her close. "Never alone. Not ever again." "Daddy? Mom? Come see. I finished the zoo." They walked back to the living room, where Leo had indeed created an impressive zoological masterpiece. Animals roamed through carefully constructed habitats, visitors moved along designated paths, and a small Lego family stood at the entrance, ready to begin their adventure. "It's incredible," Caleb said, meaning it. "Tell me about it." "Well, this is where the lions live, and this is the penguin house, and over here is the dinosaur exhibit. Even though dinosaurs aren't real anymore, I thought they should have a place too." "That's very thoughtful." "And this," Leo said, pointing to the Lego family, "is us. See, there's you and Mom and me, and we're going to see all the animals together." Caleb knelt beside his son, this little boy who had changed everything simply by existing. "That sounds perfect. Can we go to the real zoo tomorrow?" "If you want." "I do. And maybe we can learn more about penguins and you can tell me more facts and Mom can bring sandwiches." "Deal." As Leo returned to his blocks, adding finishing touches to his creation, Caleb felt the profound weight of contentment. Not the sharp satisfaction of a closed deal or the adrenaline of competition, but something deeper, more lasting. He'd learned that success wasn't about building empires or accumulating wealth. It was about building blocks on a Saturday morning. About showing up for soccer practice and school plays. About choosing love over fear, presence over profit, family over everything else. The millionaire who once thought emotion was inefficient had learned that some things, some people, are worth the slow burn of daily commitment. Worth the sleepless nights and the sacrificed meetings and the choice to be ordinary in all the ways that actually matter. All because a little boy with a birthmark had walked into his life and reminded him what it meant to be chosen. And now, as he watched Leo carefully place a tiny Lego dinosaur in its new home, Caleb knew he'd been chosen again. By this woman who'd given him a second chance. By this son who'd taught him how to be a father. By this new life growing inside Isla, a testament to the family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who believes in the power of love to change everything. Subscribe to Mr. Ashbourne Golden Narratives for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all that it's never too late to choose love over everything else. Remember, the greatest success isn't what you achieve, it's who you become and who you choose to love along the way. Until next time, keep believing in second chances and the magic of choosing family over everything else. The wail of the infant pierced the silence of Mike Thorne's fortress-like mansion, echoing through rooms that had never known a child's cry. The billionaire stood frozen, staring at the bundle on his doorstep, the security alerts still blaring in the background. "Sir, should I call the authorities?" his head of security asked through the intercom. Mike didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the note tucked beside the screaming infant, a single word written in familiar handwriting. "Yours." But before we continue, welcome to Mr. Ashbourne Golden Narratives, where stories come alive and hearts connect. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our storytelling family. Now, let's get back to the story. The baby's cries grew more insistent. Rain began to fall harder, drops splashing onto the child's blanket. Mike made a decision that would alter the course of his life. He silenced the alarm, dismissed his security team, and brought the child inside. For a man who ran a billion-dollar data analytics empire, Mike Thorne was completely unprepared for this moment. His hands trembled as he awkwardly lifted the carrier, bringing it into his immaculate living room where no child had ever set foot. "What am I supposed to do with you?" he whispered, looking down at the red-faced infant. The baby girl, he determined after a moment of hesitation, couldn't have been more than 3 months old. Her eyes, when they finally opened between cries, were a startling shade of blue-gray. His shade. Mike's phone rang. Madison Chin, his chief of staff for the past 5 years, was calling. "The security system sent me an alert. Is everything okay?" Madison's voice was tense with concern. "I need you here. Now. And bring baby supplies." "Baby supplies?" "Mike, what's happening?" "Someone left a baby at my door. With a note claiming..." He couldn't finish the sentence. 40 minutes later, Madison arrived with bags from a 24-hour store. Unlike her boss, she knew exactly what to do, quickly preparing a bottle while Mike paced, still in his rain-soaked clothes. "You need to call the police," Madison said firmly, testing the formula temperature on her wrist. Mike shook his head, showing her the note. "Not yet. I need to know if it's true first." Madison's eyes widened. "You think this child might actually be yours? How is that possible?" "Who?" "Elena," Mike said quietly. "The handwriting. It's hers." "Your missing researcher? The one who disappeared?" Madison looked incredulous. "Mike, that's impossible. You've had the best investigators in the world looking for her." Mike watched as Madison expertly fed the now quiet infant. "I need a DNA test. Tonight." Discreetly. "You know this could be a setup, right? Someone trying to get to you or the company?" The baby's tiny hand wrapped around Mike's finger as he reached toward her. Something shifted in his chest, a feeling he couldn't name. "I know exactly what this could be," he said. "That's why I need that test." Have you ever had a moment where your entire world changed in an instant? Where you had to make a life-altering decision with no time to prepare? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever found yourself facing an unexpected crossroads. Dawn broke over the Seattle skyline as Mike stared at his tablet. The DNA results displayed in undeniable clarity. 99.998% probability of paternity. The child sleeping in the makeshift crib, a drawer lined with blankets, was undeniably his daughter. "How is this possible?" Madison asked, watching Mike's face carefully. Mike leaned back, memories flooding his mind. 4 years earlier, Nexus Technologies had been contracted by the government to assist in the search for Elena Vora, a cultural anthropologist who had disappeared during research in Eastern Europe. Elena wasn't just brilliant, she was fearless, venturing into isolated communities that existed off the grid. Mike had joined the search team personally, drawn to the case for reasons he couldn't articulate. For 3 intense weeks, he and Elena worked together, following leads through remote villages. Their connection was immediate and unexpected. The night before a breakthrough, they shared a single night together. The next morning, Elena received a phone call that visibly shook her. She told Mike she needed to handle something alone and would return. She never did. It was one night, Mike said quietly. She disappeared the next day. I searched for her for months. Madison placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. And now you have a daughter. The baby stirred, making small noises that already seemed to pull at something deep inside him. I need to keep this quiet, Mike said. No one can know about her until I understand what's happening. Mike, you run a multinational corporation. You can't just disappear to play dad. I'm not playing anything. His voice was firm. If Elena sent her to me, there's a reason. The note said she's mine. It didn't say Elena was coming back. Madison sighed. You'll need legal guardianship papers. A birth certificate. I can make some calls? No. Only you know about this. For now. As if on cue, Mike's phone rang. James Carson, his business partner and CEO of Nexus Technologies' European division, was calling. Mike, where are you? The Japanese investors are waiting. Family emergency. Madison will step in. Pause. Family emergency? You don't have family. Something in James's tone made Mike tense. I'll call you later. He ended the call, looking down at the sleeping infant. His daughter needed a name. Sophia, he decided. It means wisdom. Something they would both need in abundance. 2 weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and crash courses in infant care. Mike worked remotely, claiming a personal health issue, while Madison ran interference with the board. The baby, Sophia, was thriving, but Mike was no closer to understanding why Elena had sent her now after 4 years. Until he found it. While changing Sophia's blankets, Mike noticed an unusual stitching pattern along the edge. Too uniform to be a mistake, too deliberate to be decorative. Binary code, he whispered, recognizing Elena's signature method of encryption. Working through the night, he translated the pattern while Sophia slept beside him. Nexus compromised. Trust no one. Mike's blood ran cold. He immediately initiated a secure, isolated server search of Elena's old research files. Files he'd been unable to access after her disappearance. By morning, he'd found fragments of Elena's true work. Her anthropological research was cover for something more complex, documenting a network of people who had disappeared themselves to escape dangerous situations. Witnesses in protection programs, domestic violence survivors, journalists who had exposed the wrong people. Elena had been mapping safe houses and underground routes, information that in the wrong hands could expose hundreds of vulnerable people. Madison arrived as Mike was connecting patterns on a digital board. Someone's been monitoring our security systems, he told her without preamble. There's been an intrusion in the company mainframe every night at exactly 2:17 a.m. for the past 6 months. How did you miss this? Because I used my access codes. But I'm never online at that time. Madison looked at Sophia, then back at Mike. You think someone inside Nexus is involved with Elena's disappearance? I think Elena discovered something dangerous, and whoever's responsible knows she had evidence. They've been watching me, waiting to see if she'd contact me. Nodded. And instead, with a warning, she sent your daughter. His phone rang. James Carson again. Mike, the board is getting restless. Whatever's going on, you need to get back to work. Or at least explain your absence. I told you it's personal. Nothing is personal when you run a company like Nexus. Is this about a woman? The question was too pointed, too knowing. Mike's suspicion deepened. I'll be back next week, he lied. After ending the call, Mike contacted the one person outside Nexus he still trusted, Detective Laura Torres, who had led Elena's missing persons case. I need your help, he told her. It's about Elena Vora. That case has been cold for years, Torres replied. Not anymore. She sent me something. Something important enough that she's still hiding. What did she send? Mike looked at Sophia, sleeping peacefully. Hope. Detective Torres arrived at Mike's home through a service entrance, her expression shifting from professional detachment to surprise when she saw Sophia. Elena's? Mike nodded. And mine. Torres studied the baby, then the evidence Mike had gathered. You believe someone at Nexus is connected to her disappearance? That's a serious accusation. The timing lines up. 3 weeks before Elena vanished, our European division finalized a contract with a data analytics program for several Eastern European governments. The same region where she was researching isolated communities, Torres noted. Exactly. Elena had access to our servers. If she discovered Nexus technology was being used to track people who didn't want to be found, the very people she was trying to protect, Torres finished. Their conversation was interrupted by Sophia's sudden high-pitched cry, different from her normal fussing. Mike rushed to her, finding her unusually warm to the touch. Something's wrong. Torres felt the baby's forehead. She's burning up. She needs a doctor. I can't take her to a hospital. No one can know she exists. She's a baby with a dangerously high fever. This isn't optional. 40 minutes later, Mike sat in a private room at Seattle Children's Hospital, holding Sophia while a doctor examined her. Despite his attempts at anonymity, he knew it was only a matter of time before someone recognized him. Ear infection, the doctor diagnosed. Common but painful. She'll need antibiotics. As they waited for the prescription, Mike noticed a nurse staring, then whispering to another staff member. By the time they left the hospital, he knew their cover was blown. Sure enough, his phone buzzed with an alert from Madison. Check the news. The headline made his stomach drop. Tech billionaire Mike Thorne spotted with mystery baby. Worse, a text arrived from an unknown number. You were told to keep her existence secret. You have 24 hours. Torres read the message over his shoulder. We need a safe house. Now. When they arrived at Torres' secure apartment, Mike received a video call from Madison. Someone's been in your office, she reported. I found this when I went to get your files. She held up a photo of Elena, one taken after her disappearance, showing her very pregnant. There's more, Madison continued. I've been tracing financial transfers from our European division. James Carson has been moving money through shell companies for years, the same period Elena was researching in that region. Mike felt the pieces clicking into place. He knew. He's known all along. Known what? Torres asked. That Nexus technology was being used to hunt people. That Elena discovered it. That she was carrying my child. Mike's phone rang. James Carson's name flashed on the screen. Hello, Mike, James said, his voice unnervingly calm. I believe we need to discuss your daughter. What lengths would you go to protect someone who depends on you completely? Someone who represents both your greatest vulnerability and your greatest strength? Double tap and comment if you're ready to see Mike fight for everything that matters. You made a mistake bringing her to that hospital, James said, his voice metallic through the phone's speaker. We had an agreement with Elena. I never agreed to anything, Mike countered, signaling Torres to trace the call. Not you. Elena. She stayed away, we left her alone. Now she's broken that arrangement. By sending me my daughter? By sending you a message. Don't play naive, Mike. It doesn't suit you. Mike kept him talking. If you know where Elena is. I don't. That's what makes her dangerous. She has information that could compromise operations across multiple countries. Nexus operations. Pause. Not officially, no. Let's call it a side venture. One that's been quite profitable. You've been using my company to track people for what? Governments? Criminal organizations. Information is power, Mike. You built the tools. I simply found additional applications. Torres signaled she had a location. What do you want? Mike asked. The thumb drive Elena stole before she disappeared. The one I assume she told you about when she sent your daughter. Mike's mind raced. There was no thumb drive, at least none that he knew about. You have 12 hours. Bring it to the office. After that, I can't guarantee anyone's safety, including your daughter's. The call ended. He's bluffing, Torres said. He wouldn't risk going after a child. He doesn't have to. He just needs to expose her existence to the people he's working with. Mike ran a hand through his hair. We need to find Elena. Madison called next, her voice tense. Mike, I found something in Elena's old research notes. There's a pattern of coordinates hidden in her reports. Locations across Eastern Europe that form a kind of underground railroad. For people escaping dangerous situations, Mike confirmed. Yes, but there's one location that doesn't fit the pattern. It's in a remote area of Washington state. Torres looked up, interested. Where exactly? A cabin near Mount Baker. Registered to a shell corporation that dissolved 3 years ago. Mike felt a surge of hope. She's been hiding in plain sight. Not overseas, here. There's something else, Madison continued. I found evidence that James was funding Elena's research before you even met her. This goes back at least 6 years. The revelation hit Mike like a physical blow. He placed her in my path. Their meeting wasn't coincidental. What do you mean? Torres asked. The government contract to find her when she disappeared. James arranged it. He knew I'd take personal interest in a missing academic. He wanted me looking for her to flush her out of hiding. But why send your daughter to you now? Madison asked. Mike looked at Sophia, sleeping despite the chaos around her. Because she knew I'd protect her at any cost, And because she needed me to finally see the truth. Torres checked her weapon. We need to move. If this cabin exists, it won't stay safe for long. Wait, Mike said, sudden clarity washing over him. The thumb drive James mentioned, I think I know where it is. He gently lifted Sophia, feeling along the lining of her carrier. There, nearly invisible, was a small slit in the fabric. Inside, a tiny thumb drive no bigger than a fingernail. Elena didn't just send me our daughter, Mike said quietly. She sent me everything. James and Sophia fled Seattle in an unmarked police vehicle. The thumb drive was secured in an encrypted cloud server, its contents backing up to multiple locations. If anything happens to me, Mike told Madison via secure line, release everything to the FBI, Interpol, and major news outlets. Be careful, Madison warned. James has called an emergency board meeting. He's telling everyone you've had some kind of breakdown. Let him. It buys us time. The journey to Mount Baker took them through winding mountain roads, each mile increasing Mike's hope of finding Elena, and his fear of what might be waiting. We should be prepared, Torres said, checking her rearview mirror for the third time. If she's been hiding for 4 years, she won't be easy to find even at this location. She'll have escape routes, contingencies, Mike agreed. But she sent Sophia to me for a reason. She wants to be found by me. Torres suddenly accelerated. We've got company. Black SUV 2 miles back. Mike turned to see the vehicle gaining on them. James? Likely his people. Hold on. Torres veered onto a Forest Service road, the unmarked car bouncing violently on the uneven surface. Sophia woke, crying from the sudden movement. We need to split up, Torres decided, pulling behind an abandoned ranger station. Take Sophia through the woods. The cabin should be 3 miles northwest. I'll lead them away. They could be armed. So am I. Go. Mike secured Sophia to his chest with a makeshift carrier and plunged into the dense forest, using skills he'd learned during his years searching remote areas for his birth mother. He moved quickly but carefully, listening for pursuers while trying to keep Sophia calm. The infant seemed to sense the danger, her cries reduced to occasional whimpers. After an hour of difficult terrain, Mike spotted a small cabin nestled against a cliff face, nearly invisible among the trees. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney. Someone was home. Approaching cautiously, Mike noticed sophisticated surveillance equipment disguised as bird houses and garden ornaments. Elena always was brilliant with technology. He stepped deliberately into a clearing, knowing he was being watched. Elena, he called softly. It's Mike. I have our daughter. Silence stretched for long seconds before the cabin door opened a crack. Prove you're alone, came a voice he'd thought about every day for 4 years. I'm not. Sophia's with me. The door opened wider, revealing a woman with dark hair cut short, her face thinner than he remembered but her eyes the same. Intense, intelligent, wary. Elena's gaze moved to the bundle against his chest, emotion breaking through her guarded expression. You named her Sophia, she said, her voice catching. It seemed right. Elena stepped back, allowing him inside. The cabin was sparse but functional, walls covered with maps and photos. Her research continued even in hiding. James's people are coming, Mike warned. Detective Torres is leading them away, but we don't have much time. Elena nodded, already moving to a laptop. I've been monitoring their communications. They found this location 3 days ago. That's why I had to send Sophia to you. I couldn't risk them finding her with me. Why not tell me everything from the beginning? Why disappear for 4 years? Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard, initiating what looked like a deletion protocol. Because I didn't know who to trust. Because James threatened everyone in my network if I exposed him. Because I discovered I was pregnant after I went into hiding, and by then, it was too dangerous to contact you. Mike carefully transferred the now sleeping Sophia to Elena's bed. The thumb drive you hid with her has everything. Financial records, communications, the names of government officials James bribed. Evidence of how Nexus technology was used to locate and, she hesitated, eliminate people who posed threats to certain regimes. Outside, a branch snapped. Elena tensed, reaching for something under her desk. They're here, she whispered. Back door, Elena whispered, grabbing a go-bag with practiced efficiency. There's a tunnel system under the cabin. Mike lifted Sophia, who remained miraculously asleep despite the tension. Torres should be. The sound of a helicopter overhead cut him off. Too many of them, Elena muttered, leading them to a bookcase that concealed a narrow passage. This route leads to a cavern system. 2 miles in there's a junction. Left leads to an exit near the highway. Right goes deeper into the mountain, a dead end to anyone who doesn't know the path. As they descended into darkness, Mike's phone vibrated. Madison. James has convinced the board you've had a psychotic break, she reported. They've suspended you pending psychiatric evaluation. He's telling everyone you've kidnapped a child. He's trying to control the narrative, Mike realized. When this evidence comes out, he wants my credibility already destroyed. I've secured the thumb drive data as you asked, but Mike, there's something else. I found a direct link between James and the initial contract to search for Elena. He specifically requested you lead the search team. Mike glanced at Elena moving ahead of him with a flashlight. He wanted me to find her after she disappeared. No, Madison corrected. According to these emails, he arranged for you to meet her before she disappeared. He engineered your entire relationship. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to move single file. Behind them, voices echoed. James's men had found the passage. Why? Mike asked. Why orchestrate our meeting? I don't know yet. But I've scheduled an emergency meeting with 3 board members who still trust you. If you can get back with proof. The call cut off as they moved deeper underground. Elena, Mike called ahead. James arranged for us to meet. Did you know? She paused, turning to face him. In the dim light, her expression was unreadable. Not at first. I was recruited for legitimate research. When I discovered what they were really using my work for, I went to James with concerns. He suggested I work with you instead, said you were developing ethical guidelines for data use. And then we fell for each other? Yes. That wasn't part of anyone's plan. Her eyes softened. Least of all mine. The voices behind them grew louder. We need to split up, Elena decided. You take Sophia to the left tunnel. I'll lead them right. No. We stay together. Mike, if they catch all of us. They won't. He shifted Sophia to one arm and pulled out the satellite phone Torres had given him. But we're not running anymore. When James and his men emerged into the cavern 10 minutes later, they found Mike standing alone, Sophia and Elena nowhere in sight. Where are they? James demanded, flanked by 3 armed men. Safe, Mike answered calmly. Along with the evidence Elena collected. James's smile was cold. Evidence that will never see daylight. Do you know how many governments would be compromised if her allegations came out? How many powerful people would fall? That's the idea. Always so righteous, James shook his head. Did Elena tell you why I introduced you to? What I hope to achieve? Enlighten me. Your algorithm was brilliant for finding patterns, except it kept flagging our operations as anomalies. I needed someone with Elena's expertise to help refine it, make our activities invisible to your scrutiny. Having you fall for her was just what you were really doing. She became a liability. One I've been trying to eliminate for 4 years. Mike nodded slowly. I thought so. Thank you for confirming that on record. James's expression changed as Mike pulled back his jacket to reveal the wire. From the shadows, Detective Torres emerged with her weapon drawn, followed by 2 FBI agents. James Carson, you're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, and solicitation of murder, Torres announced. As James was handcuffed, his face contorted with rage. This changes nothing. You think people will believe a data nerd and a woman who's been in hiding for years? I have connections you can't imagine. Actually, said Elena, stepping into view with Sophia and Madison beside her, we're counting on those connections. The thumb drive was just a backup. The real evidence was uploaded to your board members 20 minutes ago. On cue, Madison held up her tablet, showing a video conference with Nexus board members and federal prosecutors. It's over, James, Mike said quietly. Justice doesn't always come easily, but when it does, it's worth every sacrifice made along the way. Hit subscribe if you believe that truth, no matter how deeply buried, eventually finds its way to the light. 3 months later, Mike stood at the window of his Seattle penthouse, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk fell. Behind him, Elena's voice floated from Sophia's nursery, a lullaby in Romanian, her mother's native language. The aftermath of James's arrest had been a storm of federal investigations, international inquiries, and media scrutiny. Nexus Technologies had survived, though changed forever. With James and his conspirators removed, Mike had implemented rigorous ethical oversight for all company operations. More importantly, the people Elena had been protecting were finally safe. The underground network remained operational, but now with legitimate protection and resources. Is she asleep? Mike asked as Elena joined him at the window. Finally. She's stubborn, like her father. Mike smiled, still amazed at how naturally they'd fallen into parenthood together despite everything. The Justice Department called, he said. James accepted the plea deal. 20 years, no possibility of parole. Elena nodded, relief visible in her expression. And the people he exposed? All relocated with new identities. Your contacts made sure of it. They stood in comfortable silence, the weight of the past 4 years finally lifting. I've been thinking, Mike said eventually. About my birth mother, the search that started all of this. Elena took his hand. Do you want to keep looking? I think I found what I was really searching for. He gazed at their intertwined fingers. Family isn't always what we expect it to be. The elevator chimed, announcing Madison's arrival with Detective Torres, now regular dinner guests. They've approved the foundation, Madison announced, holding up official documents. The Sophia Project is officially operational. Mike had established a foundation dedicated to reconnecting families separated by violence, trafficking, and political persecution, using Nexus technology for what he'd always intended, bringing people together rather than exposing them. To new beginnings, Torres said, raising her glass during dinner. And found family, Elena added, her eyes meeting Mike's across the table. Later that night, as Elena slept beside him and Sophia's gentle breathing came through the monitor, Mike reflected on the strange path that had led him here. A billionaire who had everything except what mattered. A researcher who sacrificed everything to protect strangers. A child who brought them back together. Sometimes the most precious things come to us in the most unexpected ways. His company had been built on predicting patterns, yet the most important development in his life had been the one he never saw coming. The tiny human being who arrived with nothing but a note that said, yours. Family isn't defined by blood alone, but by the people who stand beside you when it matters most. Share this story if you believe that sometimes the family we create is as powerful as the one we're born into. And remember, the greatest treasures often arrive in the most unexpected packages. Subscribe to Golden Narratives for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life.